This is going to be another episode of Summoning Insight. It wouldn't be 10 years of doing Summoning Insight if somehow, like time is a flat circle, we're all the way back at the beginning. And let's check. Doublelift's causing drama in the LCS communities. Okay, right. Also, Reginald up to anything? I don't know. Scara out there. What's Cutie Pie said recently? What's going on, boys? Like, you know what's mad? It's like, this is something we do have to address because even though, don't worry, it wouldn't be Summoning Insight if we didn't dive into the minutiae of the specific Doublelift drama. Just as a meta point before we get into this, Monty, it's like one of the things I actually genuinely don't think Doublelift is actually aware of. Like, here's the thing, Monty, I've never seen him as a mastermind or a Machiavellian thinker. I don't even think, even as much as I pretend like Lena Poppets him, I don't think she's that Machiavellian or that like deep in her thinking. She's not on some like Dune level intrigue level planning issue, plotting 10 steps ahead. So what I'll just say this is, the joke is, obviously, Doublelift is just the drama of the LCS, whether he plays or not. Like, in any context, you just insert him. He is the active agent that just causes drama in any scenario, doesn't he? Because as you see in this particular one, Monty, there's one with Team Liquid, etc. It's like, all I would say is this to people. It's like, what would the actual reason for this to be an issue right now be? Because here's where I want to set the grounds, right? Because I've now watched this happen 3 times, Monty. Here's what happens. Doublelift loves to do that. Me thinks the lady doth protest too much thing where he goes, I retire and I don't want to play. And besides, I'd never play for your org. And then it's like a different day. He forgets that was his like story that he's supposed to be sticking to. Then the next day he'll just be like, it's bullshit because besides they wouldn't even sign me when I had like a super team lined up. And you'll be like, what is that the same team you want to join? Then the next day he's like, I don't even like Reginald. He's a prick. And the way he treated everyone was disgraceful. It would have been a pleasure and a privilege to have played for TSM. Like, what? I can't tell if it's like the same guys experience, like, different like personalities at the same time, or if he just changes his mind and can't keep track of the lines. Because, bro, he's doing it again with this Liquid one. Like, remember, simultaneously he wanted to retire, but then also like now he could have been in some Liquid super team. And then here's the maddest part about all this, Monty. We'll just start here because here's what I'll lay out. People don't know. It's just some drama about did the Dodo guy, who's the general manager of Team Liquid, block Doublelift essentially. Right? Here's one of the maddest details of all. I can't believe everyone else is just letting this skip, by the way. Once we get into this topic, here's what I will offer to you as the first obvious comment that everyone else is missing. Is, bro, Doublelift, when he's explaining his like drama with Team Liquid and the Dodo guy, he manages to like really quickly skate over the part where he was paid like an enormous salary to not try for a split. I always think, Monty, I'll never ever recover. I'm not joking. For LOL pros specifically, look, Counter-Strike pros are entitled in their own way, guys, in different senses. In some ways, they're cooler. In some ways, they're more idiotic. Like, for example, they do think they should live from home and get all the same thing, But I'll tell you where League of Legends pros I've never recovered, Monty, was when me and you in 2020 were in LA doing Flashpoint. And that famous story came out that the LCS pros wanted to cancel the spring split. Because I've always thought that was actually mischaracterized. Because here's the part no one gets, Monty. When they said cancel the split, they meant as in, give us all our salaries still, yes, but then let us just not play. So that means for real, guys, people like Doublelift actually for real were like, can I have $500,000? It's like, here's a big sack of money, Doublelift. I don't feel like playing now, though. It's like, can I have the 500K back then? Well, no, that's mine. That's my 500K. Like, I don't think, dude, people don't get this. Like, do people not know how much money Doublelift was on in his career? Like, I would get the idea of like, I don't feel like playing this split. If he was on like, fucking 2K a month, and this was like 20 years ago. Bro, people like him wanted to just be given a king's ransom and then not play the fucking video game that they play for a living. Like, this is why when we get into this topic, I actually love Doublelift drama, because it very much is within the world of like Mean Girls, Monty. You have to enter this bubble that isn't reality and learn the rules and what they think's fucked up before you can even get into the drama. Like, reality doesn't impinge on this story at all. So let's get into it. A classic Doublelift drama. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I think this whole thing is obviously ridiculous because every time, there is some sort of, let me start this way. I have heard Doublelift tell stories about things that happened where I was, and he has massively fucked up the series of events that occurred, or
Oh, by the way,
convenient.
Monty, literally, as he was telling one of these stories, he did that thing where he tells you what they said, and he goes like, and then they said X, and then Lena goes, no, he didn't, he said this, and then he goes, oh yeah, that's right. And it's like, bro, you were just giving a testimony what he was saying 1 second ago. What do you mean? Lena just goes, actually, you said this. You're like, yeah, no, that's right. You said whatever she said. Like, what the fuck, bro? What's your? How am I supposed to rely on what you said 1 second ago? No, go on. Yeah, he is mad for his memory, and he's so weird.
So I would not consider him a particularly reliable source, because some of the comments that I've seen, like especially around when we got Seraph onto CLG, are just completely wild.
He's definitely one of those people who, this is what I think he's doing now. He's one of those people who like retcons what happened based on what he feels about it now, if you know what I mean.
And the truth about what happened and about Seraph joining is that he basically ignored all requests to look at our scouting for a top laner. And so he did not involve himself in that process whatsoever. Meanwhile, people like Dexter and Aframu were very involved with scouting various top laners, including actually at the time Odo Omne was somebody that Dexter was duoing with. And we were actually collecting a lot of footage on Seraph in Korea. We were looking at North American top laners. We were looking at Odo Omne. And myself and the players were kind of like collecting all this information, providing YouTube, like private YouTube videos or video links to watch. And the truth is, Doublelift ignored the whole process and so didn't have anything to say about it. And his version of events is like, lol, Monty like just picked it, which was not true at all. It was a collaborative decision that was made amongst the players. He just didn't feel like putting in the effort in between splits in order to have an informed opinion, is what actually happened. But the way he presents it is as if, you know, the way Doublelift always presents information is as if he is just a passive observer with no power or agency in that situation whatsoever. And so people just do things around him and he's like a victim of his environment, which is just absolutely not true, because I can tell you that people are constantly asking him for his opinion. He basically doesn't do anything and doesn't care, and then presents it later as if these things just happened to him when he had every opportunity and in fact was asked at certain times to step in. And I think that with the drama, the latest, I'm not even sure it's drama, Thorin. I think like people are blowing this way out of proportion as well. Like, I don't want to make this bigger than it is, because at the end of the day,
yeah, but the joke is there's no actual real LCS drama, so it's like we're all just living off this drama. And basically the joke is, this is like if Morrissey comes out and says something to the press now. It's like, that is what Morrissey does, but guys, where's like today's Morrissey? You know what I mean? Morrissey's like 50 years old at this point. It's like, come on, like what are we doing? Why are we still riding the coattails of Doublelift drama? Like, in fact, my joke earlier is almost apt. It's like, what is Cutie Pie up to? What are we talking about here? Like, he doesn't even play anymore, bro. He doesn't even play anymore.
Right. And basically, so Dodo.
By the way, don't you get the sense, though, Monty? There's another thing that's not been revealed. I hinted at it earlier, but I actually do get the feeling that part of the reason why Doublelift himself keeps telling these stories is, bro, he's obviously in denial that he's not 100% comfortable being retired, Monty. Part of him clearly has that problem, and I've met a lot of pros. You've probably had this experience where it's not that they want to retire, but they only want to play to have like their best years still. So they only want to be on an elite team and like go to Worlds and win. But the problem with that is you want to tell them like, yeah, but that's not really a choice, is it, mate? Like, you don't get to win the NBA championship at the end of your career. You probably have like a not great career at the end. So the problem is, it feels to me like he doesn't want to play and just be a jobber in the LCS like he was on 100 Thieves. But part of him, it feels like, does want to be on like a TL/TSM super team and go to Worlds and actually have, you know, one last crack at it. That I get that vibe every year from him. And luckily, if people don't know, this even perfectly lines up with what his career was like. He isn't the guy who would put in 2 full splits of dedicated work, then go to a Worlds or an MSI. He was the guy who would sort of phone it in, get his ass together in the playoffs, then hopefully do well at Worlds or MSI. So I get the feeling he's just never gotten out of that like vicious cycle of like, in the spring maybe he thinks better of like, fuck the whole year without playing, and then he has the period where he thinks about playing, then he goes, actually I'm glad I'm not playing Reggie and all that, and then he just convinces himself it's all good and then co-streams again. So because I always got the sense that even though he always says he's happy retired now, it doesn't seem like it, mate. It's clearly an itch there. There's something bothering him about this situation. You know, he's thinking how I could still be playing. Did it last year with TSM, like I said. He's still thinking about it. I'm thinking about it. He's a good player, but, you know, just fucking cop to it. Come clean.
Well, like, and to be clear, I thought Doublelift, his last split that he played with 100 Thieves was an LCS caliber AD carry. It's not about his skills within the game. But, you know, after Bjergsen decided to suddenly retire, it's not too much of a wonder that Doublelift wouldn't want to be potentially playing in the LCS anymore. And by the way, Thorin, I think people are just not even discussing the fact that Doublelift himself said that one of the reasons he was retiring was that there wasn't much money in the LCS anymore, even for a player like him, because obviously esports winter is here. And by the way, guys, he can make much more money co-streaming than he could and streaming than he could as a professional player at this point in time. But here's the thing, Thorin. Doublelift, where do you think that money went? Have you checked your bank account recently, bro? Because all of that money that was supposed to be in this ecosystem is currently already in your fucking bank account. So what kind of deal, as we reset the bubble that you profited very greatly from, you know, why are we trying to get back into the LCS now when we all know you can make more money by literally not being in the LCS? And so here's the timeline of events that allegedly happen with Doublelift coming to Team Liquid this offseason. Basically, Doublelift was talking to JoJo, and then
also, why is it feel every offseason he is just on that, like, you up shit? Why is it like always his exes? Why is it TL and TSM 24/7, bro? What is this? Is it all the org in the league or something? What's going on? I love it.
So apparently Doublelift was like scheming allegedly with Dodo to get onto Team Liquid, and Dodo, their manager, basically said it's him or me. Like, I don't want to be on the roster that I'm managing. By the way, Doublelift is confused by this, even though he was on Team Liquid when he basically just quit playing at one point in time, and you know, was saying,
it's how I know what you're saying earlier makes sense, Monty. Doublelift doesn't actually seem to understand cause and effect. Like, he doesn't think that he was kicked off Team Liquid in spring of 2020 because he didn't want to try. He didn't want to try, but then unconnected, they just kicked him off totally unfair, Monty, for no reason. And now
of course,
the guy
they would want him back.
The guy who kicked him off and was mad that, you know, he was spending hundreds of thousands of dollars for a guy that didn't want to play. Bizarrely, this guy's been a prick now and blocking him from Czech Snots playing on his team again. You know, this whole thing that you get fired from if they don't work out. What? Bro, this sounds totally plausible. The Dodo thing, what's he even done wrong here, mate? Like, he just doesn't want to get fucked twice. What? Well, I don't even get what the issue is.
I mean, shockingly, Dodo may not want to manage a player like Doublelift on his roster who doesn't have the same level of skill relative to other AD carries that he used to have. Because while he, I believe, is a skilled AD carry, he's not at the top of the AD carry heap in North America at the current point in time, like not even close. So you're basically dealing with a lot of this drama and ego for what is effectively now a mid-tier AD carry that I guess you can maybe sell more jerseys and you can have a few more fans, but I don't think Team Liquid's really hurting for fans, honestly. They've been a very successful org. They have a lot of fans already. Is the Doublelift coming back to them really going to move the needle? Now, there was a whole bunch of drama that proceeded after this where basically Doublelift then went to Steve.
Oh, by the way, if you read between the lines, now you also know why he made that statement in this last offseason, Monty. You know, when he retired in this offseason, he said one of the reasons why wasn't just that they wouldn't spend, but that they wouldn't spend a la making a super team. I think he actually used those words, like they wouldn't import enough players or something. So what that means, Monty, is he was always lying. That means basically, read between the lines, what he was saying was the reason I'm retired is they wouldn't build me a team like a super team. That's what he actually was saying. He never was just going, oh, I'm retiring from pro play. What he did is he just got mad they wouldn't make him a super team.
But here's the thing. The thing is that we don't even know if it was possible to build this super team because JoJo apparently said he wanted to play with Berserker on Cloud9. And so he wanted to play with Berserker. So when Berserker re-signed with Cloud9, JoJo decided to go over to Cloud9, which makes total sense. So there may not even have ever been a possibility of JoJo Pyun going to Team Liquid, or not a very realistic one, if that was the requirement. And certainly, if it's true, and JoJo wants to play with Berserker, he can't play with both Doublelift and Berserker because they play the same fucking position.
Here's the problem. Doublelift used to be that girl. He used to be the it girl in high school, Monty. But the problem is, he ain't the it girl anymore. Now he's tired and played out. But the hot new girl, fucking Berserker, She's in her prime right now. This is her era. So you know what? I'm sorry. Jojo just couldn't tell you through your face, Doublelift, that you weren't his first choice, were you, mate? Like, listen, you're a cool backup. He could have gone with you as the second choice, but if Berserker's available, he's going with Berserker, and it's just case closed on that one. No problem. It's all good. It's all good.
Yeah, and also, I mean, there's the fact that, I mean, Umti's a good player, but I think if you're Jojo Pian, it may be more attractive to play with Blabber, who is a known quantity within the LCS. But, it does make you wonder what a Jojo Pian Doublelift roster would look like on Team Liquid. Probably pretty good, depending on if Core could get back into shape, right? Team Liquid has managed to kind of pull it together surprisingly well in spite of some pretty serious deficiencies in their carry position, mostly through solid macro play. So, I mean, I think this is an interesting situation, potentially, if he gets into Team Liquid, but it's totally understandable that this wouldn't just happen, that this just didn't happen. And why are we dredging all of this up now to shit on Dodo, who Doublelift said apparently didn't call Jojo's agent or wasn't making offers for him or whatever nonsense. Basically Jojo's agent was talking to Doublelift and saying Team Liquid hasn't made an offer, which, by the way, Doublelift, he is using you, Doublelift, in order to create a bidding war between Team Liquid and Cloud9. You do realize what is happening here. Jojo's agent isn't talking to you for funsies. He's saying, I want you, Doublelift, to put pressure on Team Liquid to make a competing offer for Jojo, so then I can drive Cloud9's offer higher. And then Jojo will go to Cloud9 anyway. That's a real thing that could be happening in this situation.
Yeah.
It's hard to know, but otherwise, why the fuck would Jojo's agent be talking to Doublelift and giving him all this information, being like, well, we have to accept this offer from 24 hours from Cloud9? It's hello, he's trying to create a bidding war. That's what he's trying to do. You are a patsy in the scheme to create a bidding war, and the end result may never be that he goes to Liquid, even if Liquid makes a better deal. That's a possibility. Jojo's nah, fuck it. I'd rather just go play with C9. So, I mean, the whole thing just seems ridiculous, and people just taking it at face value instead of the much more likely option, which is Doublelift being used by Jojo's agent to drive value.
It's the way to this day. This is why, by the way, I keep making this point on these shows. But the most disappointing thing about this generation isn't even your opinions. It's you don't have any. You just literally, it turns out, I thought that term was supposed to mean as a general second and third order effect, being an influencer, Monty. In the modern day, the Zoomer kid just literally treats the influencer like he is the godhead, communicating pure wisdom and knowledge directly to you. So if you're a fan of Doublelift, you just turn on his stream and whatever he says, you just go oh my god, I can't believe all that stuff happened to Doublelift, exactly like he said, and in a totally unfair way. And he's definitely remembered it all absolutely correctly, chronologically in right order, and he definitely hasn't fucking left out any details. I can trust this reliable Doublelift narrator character. And then the interjections of Lena, who, by the way, at this point in time, there's another thing I'd love to know. Is Lena actually Doublelift's agent? How does that even work anymore? Is she really just someone who works for Sentinels, again, another totally unrelated org, who's just in the same room going, oh, right, are you doing that in your business deals? What's going on with Jojo? What's he doing in his office? Get out of the fucking room, Doublelift, you idiot. You still haven't learned this lesson. You still all this time. The maddest part about that is, bro, based on what's happening here, she's just overhearing, eavesdropping all the conversations in your life like a fucked up Alexa. And then basically you're Lena, Alexa, what did I say to Dodo? And then she goes, actually, what he said was you couldn't join the team under any circumstance. What's going on? Bro, what is this setup you've got over there? This is too close.
And the other thing that's so funny about this is that Doublelift can't possibly conceive of a world where Team Liquid just didn't want him, and so Dodo and Steve. So the claim is that Dodo is lying because Dodo was saying one thing and saying no, I don't want him on the team, and then Steve was telling him different information, is oh yeah, maybe we want you on the team with Jojo, and so somebody was lying in this situation. Dodo has been the GM of Team Liquid for years at this point, and Steve is incredibly involved in the creation of these LCS rosters, guys. He always has been. Steve has been there since the Curse days where this was his only roster. He's like Jack. This is his baby. Yes. You think he's not involved, and you think he doesn't have a close relationship with Dodo? You know what the likely situation here is, Doublelift? you were getting the fucking runaround, buddy. They didn't want to be the bad guys, so they just told you conflicting information and then didn't make you an offer because they didn't fucking want you on Team Liquid. I bet you that's what actually happened. Like, what?
Yeah,
why is this so hard? Why is this concept so hard?
Right. Here's the weird thing, Monty. If they'd have actually, this is what's so silly about how he presented it. If they'd have made him a contract offer and then the negotiations just never went any further or they ghosted him, that would be one thing. But actually, what are you even telling on at this point in time? Like, in the off season, I could have played for this team, but they wouldn't even give me any sort of offer or reply to me. It's like, then it sounds like they weren't interested. Like, it's not really, we don't need the fucking mystery van and Scooby-Doo to figure this one out, do we? Like, I think we solved that one. I don't know why you're bragging about that. It's called self-report, mate. You're like, my old ex, I thought I could get back to them, but they didn't give a fuck in the end. They ghosted me completely. Like, left me on red. It's like, well, it sounds like they don't give a fuck, mate.
Thorin, this would be like us, going to Riot and trying to get on an analyst desk for Worlds at this point in time, and them telling us, oh yeah, we're very interested in you guys, and then us being like, damn, we totally thought Riot would hire us, even though obviously we have done many things that might make Riot angry, just like Doublelift has done things that probably make Team Liquid angry, that made Steve angry, that made Dodo angry, that make them not want to work with him anymore. And now he's just suddenly confused because at the core of this entire experience for Doublelift is this unassailable concept that everyone must want Doublelift at all times. But if you just put that to the side and consider maybe everyone doesn't want Doublelift, all of this suddenly makes a lot of sense.
Basically, he reminds me of one of the original stand-up bits I saw of the comedian Doug Stanhope way back in the early 2000s, Monty. And this is the part that won me over, and I got interested in this comedian because he said that America as a country is like, the whole thing where that obviously in the early 2000s, the whole angle because of the war on terrorism was like, they hate us because of our freedom, that whole like angle, right? So he said at this point in time, America is like the really overweight stripper with all like the leopard print like spandex. It's like, you just want this sexy body, don't you? You just fucking want me. Oh, you don't just want me so much. It's like, we don't. This is fucking gross. Like, you're gaslighting the shit out of us right now. Fucking hell. That's what it feels like with Doublelift. He still is just like, I'm still just like the hottest girl in fucking school. Look at this tight little ass and these fucking pumped up lips. It's like, bro, you are fucking washed at this point. Like, look, you can still pull above average, but your problem, and this is a sad thing, is you aren't Doublelift anymore. And that really is the biggest problem of all, because when you are Doublelift, by the way, you can live in this weird bubble where you can do all this weird behavior and you can always be the diva and you can always sort of like we say, you can get away with like listening to 1 out of every 10 words and just going, yeah. And then just like it works out somehow anyway because everyone just smooths out your life in front of you. I don't know what to tell you, Doublelift, but I don't know. Welcome to reality. Except you're not even in reality yet, because as Monty said, you actually just need to basically lean back and enjoy your other safety that have been a fucking course leader. Just doing the same old shit stories. Basically, just get Meteos and fucking Sneaky, get them all onto a stream and then go, remember that? I'm a cutie pie. Season 5. And then just keep, basically it's like Mad Libs at this point in time. You guys should actually have like a spin wheel, like, oh yeah, remember fucking Vulcan, lol, remember that team Vulcan? Not the support, of course, XDG. And then just spin the wheel again, and I got Immortals, remember that Noah Winston, socialism, more like fucking bankruptcy.
Remember Rainover and Hooney?
Exactly. The joke is, at this point, Monty, Doublelift stream should actually be what the South Park creators made fun of the Family Guy mechanism, where those manatees just pressed those buttons and it made like a Mad Libs. Like, what if, like Gary Coleman was in an elevator in 1928 with, I don't know, Doc Brown from Back to the Future? It would just like create like a Mad Libs scenario. That's what Doublelift stream may as well be, mate. Just any Mad Libs shit from the past. Because like you say, my actual favorite for real, though, unironically, is when I buckle in, like you said, to hear Doublelift tell a story I already know the details of, and I'm just listening to how he's going to inaccurately tell this story and like totally change just based on how he feels today. Because like you say, when he tells those stories about like Seraph and stuff, you want to just go like, where were you in this story though? I know, like it's like a fly on the wall. Like, you could have just said something, what? It's true. He has no agency at all. He's a human with no agency. It just happens to him. Reality just happens to him, mate.
Well, I just don't even understand, Thorin, because like, what is the purpose of doing this besides just to? I mean, I don't even think it does anything to Dodo or Team Liquid. It's like, bro, they didn't want you to play for their team.
Who cares?
Like, who cares? Like, that's how this works. They didn't want you on the roster, or they couldn't get JoJo, and so they couldn't get you on the roster, and they knew that. Who cares? I mean, that's just how it went down. Would they be better with you as opposed to Yun? Probably, I would say. Would you have signed? Would you have signed with APA on this roster? You would not have. So
even if he did, though, let's be real. I think the reason why, quite frankly, Doublelift might think otherwise, but I don't think Team Liquid's given like 1 second of fucking thought to this. They might want. I could believe maybe they get annoyed at him like putting information they think's wrong out there. Maybe they want to address it. I get that part, but like I don't think they're actually worried because, as you say, Monty, the team wouldn't be like insane. It wouldn't like be an auto winning LCS, and then it probably cost way more money to pay Doublelift. Like I'm sure the young guys way cheaper. Like they actually are probably totally happy with their choice, guys.
Yeah.
Bearing in mind where they are, and after all those years of spending big, I'm sure they're totally happy with this.
I mean, this roster is probably relatively cheap, and they're already, a team that has a good shot at making top 4 in playoffs. Are you really unhappy about that? If you're Team Liquid relative to your spend, I don't think that's unreasonable. You're spending a lot less money than Cloud9 and FlyQuest. You might be spending less money than NRG, frankly. Like, I don't know. That's certainly a possibility. Yeah. So I think the whole thing is rather silly, but I keep getting asked about it, and everybody seems very weirdly invested in this. And I just don't even understand what the point is, Thorin, because Doublelift's stream has been going very well. Why does he care about being on a professional team anymore? Isn't this the point in his career where he should be transitioning into general streaming? Like, you would think too that he could probably get co-streaming privileges for LPL or LCK if he wanted to. He's also probably sitting on a massive pile of money, but he could stream anything he wants at this point in time, and I think he would have probably relatively significant viewership. So why not just pursue that at this point in time rather than meager paychecks from a dying LCS? What's the point?
Because here's the real problem. Let's be real. This is actually the reason why I have told so many pros who are friends of mine, don't retire until you think you're completely spent. Because the dilemma will always be for pro athletes and people in esports.
One last ride.
Yeah, and the worst thing is, the reason why you're always going to go for it is because part of you eventually realizes once you've done like a semi-retirement, like you don't have 50 years to make that choice. You're only going to get like one more year sort of within these next few years. So if you want that one last chance, you better take it now, because you eventually realize, like a sports star, I can't play when I'm 50, can I? Like, I better just come back for a year now. But the sad thing is, there's a reason why almost every comeback is insane diminishing returns. Like I always tell people, whatever made you leave, you'll just forget about it when you go away, because that problem probably goes away or dissipates in the background. But the second you start again, you're going to remember, oh shit, I don't like practicing and grinding, or fuck, I'm bored of the game, or even worse, like I'm not as good anymore and I can't win the championship. Like what's going to happen is, it won't be until, the joke is, here's when Doublelift would have remembered why he retired, is if he'd played this spring split and then he came fourth in the playoffs, then he'd be like, wait a minute, I'm not even in the finals, why am I doing this again? And it'd be like, yeah, exactly, except the joke is, then you'd be turning to Dodo, like, I'm not really that motivated, and it'd be like, really, motherfucker? So in the off season, when I was wondering if we should sign you, you're not motivated at you. Because that's the other thing, guys. I just want to put one last piece of information out there that I want you to put in context of Doublelift saying all this now. Guys, it was only last fucking split we had a walkout on the LCS that Doublelift helped take part in that was going to crush the fucking LCS owners. And then after that, he's like, what? And then they won't even build a super team around me and spend even more money in esports winter and bankrupt themselves. Steve, like you say, Monty, this is how fucked Doublelift is. Basically, Doublelift's like, Steve, where's all the money? And it's like, in your bank account, Doublelift. Literally, essentially, you do understand Doublelift. In a sense, the LCS was like a fucking one of the greatest wealth transfers in competitive gaming history from a bunch of American businessmen to your bank account. Like, to you, basically, I could actually summarize more, about 80% of the LCS was Doublelift, Bjergsen, Jensen, and Hooney, and Rainover. I'll throw it to you, $1 million contract. It's those like 5 players just getting all the money from a bunch of American businessmen. And then at the end, the businessman goes, right, well, I've given you all like $30 million. So what do I get for it? And then he goes, nothing. Just, can we have more? They're like, but shit, I'm not giving more. I'm only giving like 30 million. They're like, yeah, but I need a super team to play. Oh, you're so fucking ridiculous, LCS pros. Why are you like this? Why you all like this? Oh. At least Bjergsen's had the decency to walk away already. He's just gone already, man. Come on. He's gone already.
They just think the gravy train is just going to last forever, man. And even when they have been specifically told the gravy train has ended, they're like, where's that gravy train again?
I know, exactly. I love that gravy train. It's all that money and everything.
Can I get some more gravy from the train?
I love it. Do you know what? Low key, I actually would for real. I would watch the fuck out of an episode of Doublelift's core stream with him, Meteos, and Sneaky, where they actually attempted to discuss for real the economics of the LCS. Oh, I would fucking love that, man. Because I can't even imagine how out of touch they probably are with like the salaries and what it's worth and all. Because it's like, that's the thing I've never understood about esports in general, mate. Like, I've made this point last year. You know, when that LCS walkout was going on and you had loads of pro figures in like the industry, on the industry side, Monty, who were going like, well, you know, pro players shouldn't really make millions anyway. And I just wanted to turn around like, then why should you make any money? You know, we're all running at a loss in this industry. Like, that's the weirdest argument ever, guys, because what you're basically arguing, Monty, is like, oh, wait a minute, rising tide raises all ships. Let's fucking lower this tide. It's like, well, then you're going to go down too, you moron. Like, you are aware, like, the scale of where everyone's at is all connected to each other. It's an ecosystem. It all fucking interlinks, doesn't it? So, like, I agree that they're mega overpaid, but spoiler, I'd like to be overpaid too. Can I get some of the fucking money still? Like, give me a break. What a world.
It's too good. It's too good. Well,
shout out to Double for making millions as a fucking bozo, right clicking though. Fair play. He did a good job with it.
He did a great job. Greatest North American player of all time. He
in some ways, though, I will say now I do get though, because here's the difference. Every other great pro had some other element, Monty. Like, you know what? I'll give it up to Meteos. He had like an intuitive feel for where to path and how to switch up his moves on the fly. Sneaky could just play even in lane, but then was always like a late game win condition no matter what, wasn't he? Because he had a shrewd ability to come in the team. Doublelift, for real, is just really good at clicking slightly over here and then back again, slightly over here and then back again. And then he's also really next level. Not a lot of people can do this. He can also click to target only champions, not actually minions. So by doing those three things, clicking over here, clicking back again, and targeting only champions, it turns out someone whose entire skill set's doing that, not really that great at like generalized decision making or chess master type moves. Turns out all he can do is click over here, click back, and then click A or whatever it is. That's all he can do, guys. So there you go.
Or walking guy.
He got quite far. He got a few million out of doing that, to be fair. Yeah,
that's great.
Listen, he all walked like a motherfucker. You know, he did. Oh, he'll all walk the fuck out. You don't even worry about that. He needs a super team.
His auto spacing got the bag. What can you say?
I know. That's even the worst thing. It's like, for real, guys, we don't know actually technically if League of Legends esports will ever be this big again. So the other thing people like Doublelift don't realize is they were basically here for the golden age, and then they just don't get that that's over. Like, we're in a different time period now.
Well,
like,
the LCS golden age is definitely over. Let's be clear about that. Other places.
The joke is this. No, but the joke is like, yes, Doublelift, we understand it's hard times. Weak men like you create them. Yes, we understand that's how the meme works, Doublelift. We're in the next cycle already. You have created the hard times for other people like Jojo to have to come up and to succeed through, thanks to you. Someone make a meme, but I want the fans to figure it out. You decide which players represent each of the hard times, weak men, all that. You figure out what the cycle is, but make me a cycle, the cycle of LCS or something. I think someone could make a banger if we do it right, like Reggie on one of them. I don't know which one that would be. We'll figure it out, guys. But anyway, here's the thing, Monty. When I am listening to all of this Doublelift drama, though, you'll notice that I like to listen very carefully. I like to pay attention to the word speak. I don't just listen to the general sentiment. I also actually like to figure out specifically the context of what they're saying or what they've said in the past and connect it together. So that's where actually using these Raycon headphones helps, Monty. See these?
I love it.
These are Raycon headphones. Let me have a look. I'll just open them up. little wireless headphones. I will say,
Earbuds.
people might know I'm not a super duper tech person, so I'm just going to give you like my layman's review of it. So one thing I do like about these actually is, first of all, the actual headphones themselves aren't too big. A lot of those ones actually, I notice, are fairly large. And so people with smaller ears, I'm not someone with smaller ears, but people with smaller ears are going to have a hard time. These are actually quite nice size. They've got the optimized gel tips, so they're really comfortable when you put them in. Not too bad in that sense. They can, I think they go for something like 8 hours, but they actually have like 32-hour battery life, so you can also just keep them. It's going to last you your whole journey if you don't use them. If you do, 8 hours is still quite a long amount of time. It's about the best you can hope for. They've got the noise isolation, got all that tech built into it. Probably the best feature, I'm sure everyone's seen these on these types of headphones, is the thing where you can just tap it and like when you're doing something. So basically, I would actually say, by the way, that's another feature I think is mega about these is, I would just say it makes it super easy to like dip into whatever audio stuff you're doing. By the way, like maybe you're listening to somebody inside while you're doing something else. Maybe you're in a shop or you're cooking or something. And then the point is, if someone comes in and talk to you, you have that thing, don't you? And then you can listen, talk to them, and then you're right back into it. You don't have to take it out. You don't have to wash your hands. It's like that. It's actually that. In fact, I would say the best thing about this in general is how just super easy it all is, mate. So it's incredibly intuitive. It's literally all stuff like push one button, put the thing here, plug it in to charge it. So it's got all these features. It's also, by the way, about half the price of loads of the other brands, if you know the other types of wireless headphones out there. So if you want to get these and support our channel and also save a whopping 20%, then go to buyraycon.com/LFN today to get 20% off your Raycon order plus free shipping, so you don't have to pay for the shipping. That's right, you can get 20% off and free shipping and support Last Free Nation at buyraycon.com/LFN.
Yeah.
There you go.
And also they're good for the gym too, because they are like highly water resistant, so they're designed for sweaty gym sessions also. And I know you guys listen to our content in particular quite a few places, whether you're working out or
lots of people tell me they're at the gym.
At the gym or cooking or so these are great
options.
Walk
in the countryside.
Yep. We go for a walk in the countryside. Great opportunity for you guys to support us, and thank you to Raycon's first show that they have sponsored for us. We appreciate it. We appreciate it very much. So let's move on. We've got LCS playoffs coming right up, Thorin. LEC just started. But before that, I want to have a conversation about a young rookie's performance named Milky Way.
Because it's the thing, Monty. Do you know what we actually have to do for real? I said this on Twitter, but people think I'm joking. Bro, this guy for real, we have to treat him like the League of Legends donk, mate. Like, this isn't just like a good player or a rookie. Bro, like, Rich's Wrath is right. This guy might actually just be the best League of Legends player, like, straight. This is like, it reminds me for real of, you remember this, Monty, of when Faker came out that first season. And the joke was, it's like, he was immediately the best. Like, the only debate anyone basically had, like the donk guy, was will they do it in the playoffs, basically, right? Because you remember when Faker came out, I always tell that story, that everyone voted Ambition as the all-star mid laner, but that was just because of experience in history and the fact he was on Blaze. Like, if you actually just watched with your eyes, no joke, even the first split he played, Faker was already the best player. And mate, this guy, Milky Way, the jungler of FPX, it's the same thing again, mate, because here's the problem people won't realize. I've made this analogy before. So obviously it was FPX that had Bo that did something similar, right? You remember all those years ago when he came along? But the difference is, Bo had fucking Doinby, guys. One of the best mid laners ever at Wicked. This guy has nothing. Like, the other players are aight at best. Like, I think actually the spot's not bad. He's actually playing better.
Life is actually playing very well right now.
I'll give him credit. But aside from that, mate, he doesn't even really have anything on his team. Like, the others are just all right. Like, the care guy's okay. He's not bad. But, mate, this Milky Way guy, for real, like, he could be a contender for best player in the world. This is unbelievable, right? The scale has just blown my mind, bro. It's insane.
And it just keeps getting better, Thorin. It just keeps getting better. Because although they did lose to BLG last week, they already just went against JDG and like clapped them 2-0. They beat Top Esports, even though I will say the top loss or the top win was fraudulent. Like, Top Esports was the better team in that best of 3. They just had a lead and then traded Nexus for Baron. Like, that was just dumb. And I don't think that mistake gets made a lot, again, basically. And I think if you replay that series 100 times, Top wins the majority of them. I didn't leave that series on an FPX win thinking, FPX is the better team here. I left thinking Top is the better team. That was a freak game 3. But that said, this team has had much better results than they really have any right receiving, and a lot of that is Milky Way. And it is a comparison I made on Power Spike last week, because Degon asked the question, like, when was the last time we saw a rookie this good? And I said, well, it sure looks a lot like Faker to me from the early days of Faker, because there wasn't really a ramp up time, Thorin. It was like, holy shit, these guys are so good right away. And I think you might say like Chovy or Viper on Griffin as well. But the thing about that Griffin roster was that they were playing together and all of them ended up being super good in the end. So the
difference is, Monty, I could see a world where none of these other teammates are going to make it. It's just this one guy, just him, just Milky Way. He is him, really.
Yeah. And I think it's even more amazing because, I mean, they realize that he is the win condition of this team. So the question is, what is Care doing on this roster? Like, he's playing a lot of kind of engage or control mage champions that are supportive in nature. I mean, he played Annie in the last game that they played against JDG. He plays Karma. He plays Azir. He plays Nico. The entire purpose of this comp and this team is basically to set up Milky Way and to have him be on these carries. He draws Graves bans. He draws Kindred bans. Now, Jun is maybe drawing some Kindred bans at some points in time, but it's not like every fucking game. And if you don't ban Kindred, he just goes apeshit on you, and you can't really do anything about his presence on the game. His Graves games have been really powerful. So you see like Kindred banned and then Graves banned in the second rotation. So it frees up a lot of power picks for his teammates to go after.
Rescue plays every carry jungler as well, It's like he's a stud, mate. He's just a stud. You can't ban him out.
Yeah, and okay, well, you ban those two. Well, then he gets Jin Zhao, or he finds way to carry on some of these. He's played tanks, this split as well. He's been versatile. And I think later this week on my stream, I'm just going to go through a bunch of the games and like discuss, kind of do a deep dive on what is making him so good right now individually, and identify for myself and for you guys some of the major points about his gameplay, because I was streaming my reviews of the JDG versus FPX game today, and there's so much to like about this guy. His team fighting, his willingness to initiate and shot calling, because he's clearly calling the shots because he's re-engaging fights and telling his teammates to do it. We could talk about his like game sense about where the enemy jungler is on the map, and his counter ganking is actually extremely strong. So really it's pretty amazing to see what's going on right now. And I do think, to your point, Thorin, that Life is very underrated, because one of the key facets of this team is that Life and Milky Way actually have very good synergy together, especially because Life is there basically to plan with Milky Way about how they're going to create engages, and that jungle support engage synergy, when we have Life playing Maokai or Alistair, or even now we've seen 4 games of him playing Rumble support, which, by the way, completely shit on Ruler and Missing, like shit on them in the games that were played last night. This has been a really good thing to see. So he has some help, but this team is really based around this guy and his ability to carry. And his performance has been through an extremely tough schedule. I mean, this because
LPL, he even carries in some of the losses. He's just a stud.
Oh, he was good against BLG. He was good against BLG, even though they lost those games relatively convincingly. He was going down fighting. And listen to the last couple of weeks of FPX's strength of schedule, because they basically got all the hard teams in LPL in a row. Yeah. They literally had a week where they went 3-0 against Top, NIP, and Weibo. Okay. Then they lost to BLG the next week. They just played JDG. Their next match is against IG. Now, if you guys don't know, those are all of the other teams besides them in a top 6 in a row. In a row. Like, what?
Let's be real. At this point, all these other coaches are aware this guy's out there. And everyone's trying to stop this guy fucking beast moding you. Like, everyone's even planned the whole draft to fuck this guy, of course.
Yeah.
They just can't stop him.
Yeah. And like, it's been exceptional. And I think those of you guys who have been watching the games understand understand this. FPX is also going to end the season with games against Rare Atom, Thunder Talk, and RNG, which is a pretty easy end to the split. So if they take the win later this week against IG, they might end the season 12-4, which is really good for LPL. But even 11-5 is going to put them in a pretty strong playoff position. Now, do I think they have the talent and the pieces to make a deep run in LPL playoffs? Probably not. I mean, they are.
There's no way. Come on.
Yeah,
they're not going to win best of fives. Come on.
They are a little bit fraudulent in that some of their wins, it's felt like they have just crazy plot armor, and like God wills them to win. And, sure, that'll work in a game here or there, but over the course of an extended, of multiple best of fives, you probably just don't get away with that. I don't think they come into a best of five against top esports as a favorite. I think they come in as a pretty heavy underdog. But this is, it's just really crazy. His pathing is excellent. His mechanics are excellent. His champion pool is excellent. It really is a wonderful thing to watch. And this is a story that feels like hasn't happened very many times, where a player right from the start is just insane. And I've also made jokes about basically Care being the mid lane equivalent of Bengi to his jungle faker, because Care is an enabler for him in many ways and does travel with him on the map. So yeah, it's crazy. And you should be watching FPX games if you're not right now. You should go back and watch the JDG series.
Yes.
You are really missing out on maybe not the best League of Legends, but it certainly is unique and it certainly is fun. And you are watching the start of a player's career who seems like he is going to be a megastar.
Let's be real. I know there's this whole story that apparently RNG, the one that owned him and they lent him to FPX or whatever. Obviously, neither of those teams are good right now in terms of, as you say, the actual other players. But the joke is, if you could just get this guy next year onto a real roster, everything's possible. You can win everything, mate. This guy looks really insane, doesn't he? I agree with you. That's why I give the analogy to what's happening in CS2 right now with Donk, where we had this player come along who also isn't playing the most traditional star up, but he's the best player in the whole game. He's just so far he has smurfed all his opening attempts, including in the biggest tournaments. And so that's why I want to watch this, because I actually do get this vibe that that's what's different. There's been players who were the best player before, but not in your first split. And then also, like we're saying, bro, I've never seen a player that was on a team as bad as this be this good. That's the thing that's crazy. Because like I say, the Bow one at least has a logic to it that you were with Doinby, prime Doinby too. Oh, yeah, I will say, I did see a joke that even though they didn't phrase it properly, so I'll make their joke better, Monty. Here's the joke. When the only thing about watching Milky Way that's a bit of a downer is just knowing that next year he'll be on Sejuani duty in an LEC team. There you go. There's the joke for you. Vitality, Bow, whatever. Because we all know what they did to fucking board it. No, the thing is, for real, I would actually say this is a rare example in League. I actually think League's one of the worst games for following individual players, unless you had things like ProView where added the clicks and stuff. This is a rare example of a player, like I said, where, dude, even in the losses, you can still watch just this player alone and you'll be entertained. Because the other thing is as well, I actually think that's what's so insane. This guy just is a demon, mate. Even when he's losing the game, he doesn't do that thing where he just gives up. He fucking just keeps fighting the whole time. It's really entertaining to watch. I think for real, this guy, by the way, I'll just say this right now, he's almost certainly going to be the MVP of the LPL. Let's be real. He's just going to be. If people don't know, he was winning the MVP award in the games they lost. This guy's too good. He's too good.
He's on top of the man of the match standings right now with 10, Kanavi with 9, Angel from OMG with 8. So he's already kind of on top of, and you have to consider too that OMG is not exactly a team that has been winning as much as other teams. They're a 50% win rate team. It just happens that Angel has won 8 of those MVPs because he's been kind of the biggest factor on there, right? So amongst top teams that are actively winning, Milky Way has been carrying. He has been the best rookie for every single week except for last week. And the only reason Sheer is because Milky Way lost, and Milky Way only played 1 best of 3 last week.
Yes.
And the week before, he was just the best player overall. And he's the only rookie who's been in that category. So at the end of this split, especially Thorin, because I think we can anticipate that he is absolutely going to style on the rest of their competition after their match against IG. And if he can style on LAN too on IG, that'll be another, big story potentially. But because he's probably just going to eat the other junglers alive for the rest of their split, I think you can assume like he's going to be he's going to end on a very big high, and that's going to be a pretty compelling reason to vote him as MVP of the entire league.
It's going to be cool that even though, like you, I don't expect him to do anything, to even just see him play the playoffs is going to be cool. We're going to get to at least see probably our playoff series one at least, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean,
We've won so many games already.
I mean, like I said, what's the likely result of the rest of their games? Like, it's either 4-0 or 3-1 is the most likely result, which puts them either at 11-5 or 12-4, and that'll put them very, very high within the overall playoff structure. And you can get a lot of buys or play kind of very deeply into the tournament in that point in time. Like if you are a top 4 seed, you get seeded directly into the third round of playoffs, where if you win one best of 5, you're now in the double elimination portion. And FPX probably is a favorite among between any of the other teams that could be fighting up in the bracket to meet them at that point in time. So you win that one, best of 5, and you're already top 4. So the question is FPX a top 4 team in the LPL? And I think the answer is I don't understand how you couldn't make that argument if the result is that they even beat top esports, and if the only top team that they've lost to in the kind of the back half of the season is going to be BLG, but they listen to this, they literally beat top, they beat JDG. If they can beat IG, those are the 3 other teams besides BLG ahead of them in the standings right now, and they beat NIP, the team below them. Their losses came into the very first part of the split. So based on recent form, I think you have to say that they're crazily enough a top 4 team in the LPL, even with all the flaws in this roster. So the question is just Milky Way. Also Milky Way. The question is whether he just gets put back in RNG prison at the end of this. Like, does he have to go then be this player on an RNG roster that may not have the coaches or the players who are willing to play this style around him? Because I think he is also benefiting from just a freak circumstance where the right players were put around him, where if he had to be on a bad roster, at least players like Care and Life.
Yes, that's true.
Are
he got
willing
some exactly. He's not just doing it all
set him up.
That's true. Yes,
right?
That's true.
Because like if you get a player with the wrong champion pool or an ego or wanting to prove something for themselves, because they really, really are trying very hard to play his style and play around him and enable him as much as possible. And it takes the coaching staff and the other players buying into that in order to produce the success that is currently existing.
I will also say as well, because I always like to bring this up, that sort of like alchemical correspondence. Milky Way, just a dope ass alias as well. What a fucking sick name.
It's great.
It's a fucking great name, isn't it?
Galactic skill. Yeah, it's good. Plus, all the Milkman memes are very funny too.
Yeah.
So we got a lot of good shit. We got a lot of good shit going on. It's been such a pleasure to watch this guy play so far. And I think, people are very justifiably hyped up about him, and hopefully he can continue to kind of move forward with his career. And
by the way, I've got an angle for you, Monty. This is where, though, I actually, for real, do think that, like, people in esports just can't be helped, mate. Like, we have all the resources here to do this, and no one's doing it. Like, why? How is it possible, Monty, that me and you are having this convo now? I saw on Power Spike you were having the same discussion. Everyone right now who watches the LPL is talking about this Milky Way guy. How is this not the #1 story on LOL Esports? Like, guys, tune in next. Will he beat the next squad that he plays? This should be like Linsanity. You remember that like years ago? It should be like a massive phenomenon where everyone in the game, like we are in CS with the Donk guy, is tuning in every game. Like, will he keep it going? Will the streak continue? Is he the best player ever? Like, how is this not like an insane media for all? Like, you should actually be funneling everyone to the LPL now, guys.
I mean, I just think it's bonkers because, they lost to BLG last week, but that they just came and like smacked JDG into the ground yesterday. And you're like, oh shit, like, this is the core of this team is still the team that was so dominant in the LPL last year. This has fucking Ruler and Missing on it. You know what I mean? Like, and even though the rest of this roster definitely isn't as strong, like Flandre is a world champion, guys. Like Yagao is a famous player, right? Kanavi still here on this roster, still an elite jungler. And this team that pound for pound is obviously significantly worse than JDG with none of the superstar potential is just putting him in the dirt. And like, that's a powerful thing to say. Like, especially considering that some of these players have just like, especially Dokdam has been like actively not good a lot of this season. Xiaolao, who's been okay, Kare's been okay, Life has been pretty good and certainly has very good synergy with Milky Way, and Milky Way's been fucking incredible. But Dokdam probably had his best series against JDG. Like, he legitimately, I think, played a lot better than I've seen in many of the more recent series. But sometimes it's like an uphill battle where they just have to drag Dokdam's corpse across the finish line in the process. Or Milky Way has to play AD carry. If we're being honest, like, Milky Way has to play Kindred. Milky Way has to play Graves. It's kind of ridiculous. Dokdam is on Senna so that Life can actually farm and be useful on Maokai. So, yeah, it's a remarkable story, but it is. I agree, Thorin. It's very weird that this isn't more of the conversation, and I think it just has to do with the LPL's popularity. Because I promise you, if this was happening in Korea, everybody would be talking about it.
Oh no, for sure. Come on.
Yeah, I think everybody would be talking about this story if Milky Way was a Korean player in the LCK, and all of a sudden, he emerges on Kwangdong or whatever, and then Kwangdong, goes ahead and like actually makes a run at the top 3. Like, this is all you'd be hearing about. The equivalent to this, guys, is if Kwangdong actually just beat D+ and KT, and Bull was like a fucking god when they substituted him in. Bull looked like the next great ADC player in the world. And then not only were they beating those mid-table teams, but they actually just take out Hanwha and T1 in the process and then like lose a game to Gen.G. You'd still be talking about this team, and you'd absolutely be talking about Bull. That hasn't happened, but that's kind of the equivalent narrative if you're an LCK fan.
I also think the other thing to add in is it's actually, in theory, easier to be a donk or a simple in Counter-Strike because the game isn't as much snowballed against you. Like, your power isn't crushed by the enemy getting stronger. Whereas the thing in League is, like, the reason I'm always so impressed, Monty, when you get like a Milky Way or a Viper right now, and even when their team's like a bit meh, they just carry every time. Because, bro, the game League of Legends is basically designed not to allow one person to carry from the losing team. Like, everything in all the game mechanics basically crush you. So, and they're playing out a jungle and fucking ADC. These guys are just studs. Like, they can't be stopped. So I think in the rare instances where people do that, you just know they actually are just bona fide. Like, there's no like fraudulent element to what's going on here. There's no smoke and mirrors that could be making this guy look good if he wasn't actually this good. Like, he just is the fucking... Like, the joke is everyone's been making these memes, but like, this is some like Dune shit. This guy is just like the fucking chosen one. It's insane. And I'll just throw this in there as well. He's a fucking Chinese jungler as well, guys. Like, here's the other thing. If some Korean came along, we're used to Korea as the best junglers of all time. Like, China usually had all the ones that were the memes, the MLXGs, Tians. Like, they're either like really good or they just in like a motherfucker. This guy actually looks well-rounded as well. Like, that's why what I really hope is that he just gets a better team, but also one that still plays around him. Because this guy has a future, mate. Like, we could be watching this guy for like 5 years. It could be sick.
I also have enjoyed the Dune memes around him of everybody just saying Lisan Al Gaib.
Yeah, sure.
That's very funny. I am enjoying that. We are all Stilgar in this moment.
In the desert of like fucking inefficient Chinese jungling, along comes the fucking fucking new messiah that will lead us all to the fucking future, isn't it? Like, it's insane. I know. The golden path of Chinese jungling.
That's right. And, the Chinese scene, LPL thought they were finally in control of Arrakis, aka the World Championship. But then the Harkonnens, the LCK, came back and kicked their asses. And now they have to form an underground guerrilla movement with the new prophet Milky Way to retake the World Championship. I mean, the stories write themselves, right?
Exactly.
Because I have to say, it's not looking good for an LPL Worlds win this year. Which, I mean, we said it looked good for an LPL Worlds win last year, and Korea won, so God only knows. But the LPL level is definitely lower on the whole compared to what it was.
By the way,
last year.
Monty, here's what's sad. Part of me will always be box office and play up the fun and entertainment angle, but I'll just give the real take first. The real take is it's actually sad that the Gen.G T1 series wasn't a banger. Obviously, we waited the whole fucking time. We talked about it all those times. Like that actually sucks because obviously there's not that many matches because we don't have we're using league formats. Like when you have league formats, you have to really savor the equivalent of the televised match, like the big Christmas Eve game. That's what these matches are to me. But bro, like that was such a whack match. Now I will say, if I flip it to comedy, obviously, when I'm thinking of those T1 stands, that was straight fire, that game where they had 0 kills, Monty. That was fucking top keck, aka hilarious. Oh, I'm loving that. And not only that, but this is why, in a fucked up way, I don't mind that they re-signed the T1 lineup. Because, Monty, what the fuck are the T1 fans going to say if Gen.G wins 4 splits in a row with totally different lineups against the same T1 lineup? What are they actually going to do if they lose 4 in a row? Because right now, Gen.G just looks like they're just going to win, mate. Like, but this lineup really has worked. They're just too good. That's the
T1 fan conundrum, right? Is that you basically just have to mentally retreat into your castle of only Worlds matters, and then ignore simultaneously, though, Thorin, if only Worlds matters, you have to ignore the fact that they got completely embarrassed in an unlikely underdog victory by DRX in 2022, where they absolutely should have mega clapped DRX in those finals, and they completely fucking dropped the ball. And
I love that, by the way. I love the fact that a T1 fan understands T1 was meant to beat DRX, but then the next year, JDG didn't win those, so just accept it, loser. It's like, I can't even handle this. Like, it's the same fucking logic. Like, but they won't give any quarter as usual. No quarter.
I think the difference is like I did predict I thought T1 was the favorite at that point in the tournament against JDG last year, whereas like year before, obviously I thought T1 was going to win those finals versus DRX. Like that was just completely insane that DRX won that world championship, and not reflective of any performance at any point in time from that DRX roster previously, right? Whereas there were very good reasons to believe that JDG, with their dominant run, their lack of, they didn't even lose a best of 5 up until that point in that year, that they would continue on that role. Plus, we couldn't have guessed that Kanavi would become a double agent and sabotage JDG from within. That was the wild thing that we couldn't predict. But yeah, I mean, it is very surprising that it happened this way. I do think that T1 had a notion coming into this series, and I think it was a good notion, that basically Pays and Lehens have been weaker as a duo in the laning phase for a lot of the split, but they had been getting better heading into the T1 match. Like there was noticeable improvement compared to their weakness earlier in this year. And so I think that T1 just wanted to prioritize, okay, we're just going to first pick Lucian on the blue side, and we'll just take Lucian Nami and just kick your head into the bot lane, and that'll be it, right? Because Pays hasn't been the best Lucian player in his career. He hasn't even been the best Lucian player this year. In terms of he's like 3-2 on Lucian. He hasn't been like one of the crazier Lucians. He actually has a 46% win rate in his entire career, whereas he has been an Aphelios and Zeri player. Now, what they didn't anticipate is that this was just going to be him then picking his best champion, which is probably Aphelios, with Lulu in that bot lane in game number 1, because Aphelios is kind of on the fringe of the meta right now, but Aphelios Lulu is a powerful lane into Lucian Nami. And clearly, like, they were expecting the Lucian pickup within this matchup, because that has been something that T1 has done. It is the most played champion by Gumayusi this split, with Senna being second. So this was predictable, and I think that on red side, Gen.G had answers. They also did some very clever things in the draft. So, for example, This is a patch with nerfed Cassante, so the patch is 14.4, and this is the patch in which Cassante has been toned down a little bit. And they picked it, but the thing you have to remember on red side is that it's still probably a flex pick for Gen.G because Chovy himself is a Cassante player.
Yes.
So it gave them a lot of freedom to kind of R5, a potential mid lane pickup, gave them a good matchup where Chovy played amazingly well on Corki into Faker's LeBlanc. Also, I think it has to be said that Faker probably is getting hurt by this patch because Azir is disabled on 14.4. Chovy has played a lot of Azir himself, but Chovy has had a larger champion pool than Faker,
of course,
that we've seen so far this split. So that's another point of consideration. And Canyon was great in this series. His Rel, he's been playing Rel all season. He kind of has switched, it looks like, from defaulting from the Maokai over to the Rel pick. Rel just looks incredibly broken in the jungle right now, by the way, like really good. And Canyon has been really solid on it. And so I think when we look at T1, like their draft where, oh no, all of a sudden they're not hard winning the bot lane and Chovy is somehow winning the mid lane matchup with the Corki, and they blind pick Jason the top side and then lose that matchup as well. And then Owner plays Jarvan because you think, oh, well, we'll just get on top of Aphelios with the Jarvan. Well, it's a lot harder to do that when there's a wild growth and you have significant amounts of CC. Like Jarvan doesn't really have a target to work with, and Owner didn't get anything done in the early game. So, T1 felt like, oh, we're trying to win these lanes and snowball it. Didn't work. Gen.G scales better. They actually cruised to this win because, as you say, no, not even kills for T1. They got 2 towers and 1 void grub. If they hadn't gotten those, it would have been a perfect game, which is pretty crazy to think about.
Yes.
So it was.
It's not even like the second game was that much better, mate. They just got dusted completely.
Well, I what's funny, Thorin, is I thought the second game draft from T1 was a lot better, right?
Okay.
Here's what happens in the second game draft. All right, we ban the Aphelios. We still first pick Lucian. Okay. So we're gonna give Pays the Callista. And we're going to give Lehens the Renata Glass. But we can counter Renata ult with Nami ult. Like we can use Tidal Wave. When we see the Renata ult coming out. Oh, what do we have? We have Poppy and Talia into Callista Ahri. Poppy is usually banned when you take Callista because when she jumps in and puts her W on, Callista can't fucking move. And Ahri also dash interrupts. You have Faker with Talia with E as well. That also stops Callista. Callista's a low range AD carry. It's not that hard to get on top of her with Poppy W or with, hit her with Unraveled Earth from Talia. And you have Ahri. So you have 2 ways to stop these dashing champions. You can also stop Canyon's engages on the Rel. And then they blind pick a TF, which is for Keen. I mean, it's for Keen because of the way Gen.G plays. And, Zeus has an opportunity to play Tristana in the top side, which is something Keen has done into Gnar, but it's not, I think this is the second game, I want to say, in Zeus's career where he's played Tristana top. It wasn't a lot.
He's definitely played it before. Yeah,
no, it was his first game, actually. It was his first game in his
Holy
entire
shit.
career. He has played Tristana top. Keen has played it twice now. Both of them have been into Gnar.
Oh, okay.
But this was his first game, so that came out of the blue, right? And he's like, oh, well, I can play into your Twisted Fate. I will have better pushing power. I have better all-in power. I'm going to take Cleanse. You take Exhaust. You use Exhaust on me when I jump in. I cleanse it, and then I kill you because I have a combat ult and you don't. You can also interrupt Twisted Fate using Tristana ult. So, there's a lot of possibilities here for the Tristana. So I liked these picks from T1. I was like, oh, this is a much better draft. This is playable. If Owner goes bot, well, we might actually see some kills here. But Pays does some interesting things. They get some new tech out, which is that with a Rend nerf onto Callista, now he Q maxes with opportunity, which is intriguing. So he's more of like a poke Callista build. So he's also avoiding kind of getting in close range where he would have to jump around a lot and potentially be at risk of, stuns or interrupts from Poppy W or Talia E. So I think they, Pays and Lehens played the bot side very well. And, Gen.G gets some pretty substantial advantages and pushes them through. So it really felt, Thorin, like the Lucian priority was a mistake. And I think if you play this series again next week, it becomes much closer. I don't view this stomp that Gen.G issued as the only thing that T1 is capable of. I think that they came in with this like blue side Lucian first pick idea and it didn't work. And I think that if you give them another chance, they probably come up with something different.
I mean, the thing is, we've only got like 2 weeks left, though. So it's not.
I mean, we'll
see
it again soon. We'll see it again soon. But I think that they would definitely. I think they would definitely do something. They will do something different next time, and I don't think that they continue down this path over and over and over again, or that it's a lost cause for T1 because they're still a very good team.
Well, obviously, yeah. By the way, who was your MVP of LCK? Chovy? Would he be your pick? Who'd you pick?
That's an interesting question.
I think you could go a bunch of ways this split.
Yeah, I would probably want to dive into some more of the stats. I mean, Chovy has been very good. I think Chovy is probably the most standard answer that you would give right now.
It's hard to think of bad games he's had, right? He's mainly just basically carries every game pretty much, feels like.
Yeah. I mean, Keen has been very good as well. Keen has also had a hugely diverse champion pool. So for me, Keen and Chovy have been the most, consistent players, but Chovy really has been, I think, the linchpin of the team. Canyon's also been very good. Pays and Lehens have been good, especially outside of lane. It's just like, I can't ignore the weakness that they had in kind of the first half of the split in the laning phase when it comes to MVP. And like all the other potential candidates from lower teams have fallen off. Like Cuz at one point could have potentially been an MVP candidate, but not in the more recent weeks. Yeah. I mean, Pioshik had some fucking incredible games. And had he kept that up, even on a KT team that doesn't win as much as some of these other teams, that would be a possibility. T1, where do you go with this? Like, I think Faker's in the mix, frankly.
Especially earlier in the split was looking really good, yeah. Yep. Zayas, obviously, you'd have to give a shout out to
Zayas, like, right? Keria again. But now that they have lost both matches to Gen.G, feels a little bit harder to give it over to T1, especially in the mid lane. HLE, like Viper, I guess, but I don't think he's better than Chovy at this point in time. Showmaker has been the best player on D+, the most consistent player, and the rest of the league is the rest of the league, right? So,
but one thing I did want to ask you about is this, right? The reason why I actually think people are low-key sleeping on the Gen.G storyline is this was supposed to be a super team, but that was going to have all the curses of a super team. Dude, it just looks really good. Like, this is actually, like, it just turns out like they've killed it. Even though people might like this, it's not even like, let's be real, Monty, because T1 signed the same roster that won Worlds, a lot of people didn't even say this Gen.G super team would be number one. They all thought T1 would still be number one. Like, this is actually like not even obvious GMing, even though the names that you're stacking are amazing. Like, obviously these were all the best players individually. Like, no one knew how these players would fit together. I mean, you talked about earlier in the episode, bro, no one knew how Canyon would fit with Chovy. There's a world where maybe that just doesn't work. Whereas I think I've seen quite a lot of sacrifice from Canyon this split. Yes, it looks like he understands his job as like, let's just get on the same path with Chovy, and then we can have some carry games, and I can have some games where I go crazy, because he's been way more supportive than I've ever seen him be. So I'm actually very impressed with how this team's working. It looks awesome at the moment. It looks great.
Yeah, and it has to be noticed that his kind of first step away from playing the more like, I'm going to tank and have smart early game pathing and just play engaged champions was the KT series that they lost. But he's branched out again since that point in time. Like, now we get the Jax jungle games where he's carrying away, and that's the end game of this roster. And I think it has been intelligently kind of a very slow approach to get to that point, because they're extremely dangerous as the team that they are without a lot of versatility. But if they can take that next step, and then all of a sudden it's Chovy playing Cassante mid, and then fucking like, here comes Carry Canyon out of the jungle, like, it becomes very scary. Because you just never know what's going on. The Talia is still technically a flex pick for this roster, and Canyon is a real fucking good Talia player. So there's a lot they can do. And I think they really haven't even hit their ceiling yet when you look at the depth and experience that some of these players have. I don't know if there is a more versatile jungle top pairing in the history of League of Legends.
Oh, definitely.
Besides Keen Canyon. just
Think
in
about the
terms of
champions they
champion
can
pools.
play. It's insane, isn't it? Yeah. Think about the champions they can flex and change, mate.
I mean, like I am a shameless connoisseur. Like, he is my favorite active player within League of Legends, because everybody's like, oh, I love watching Zeus. When he blind picks the Aatrox and goes 9-0 on this champion, I'm all about it. I'm like, let's look at Keen and the fact that he just gets wacky-ass counter picks and has this huge champion pool. To be fair, Zeus and he have played the same number of champions this split, both at 11, but, you know, Zeus's pool is very top heavy with the Aatrox.
Also, the whole fucking team plays for his picks, mate. The difference is Kane just gets a pick and then he has to do what he has to do. Doesn't he? Like, Zeus, the whole squad set up to help him fucking have an Xbox godlike game or something, you know.
I will, yes, in terms of gameplay, but oftentimes this split Zeus has been blinding. He actually is the highest blind pick top laner in the entire league.
Oh, fair enough.
Whereas Keen has the highest counter pick rate of any top laner. But you have to look at what they do with this. I mean, they're both wonderful players, guys. And what I like about Zeus is like, I am going to play this champion. I am going to blind pick it, and I'm going to slap you with my dick in this lane, and I'm going to be doing amazing things in this game. And Keen is like, all right, I'm going to sit here, and I'm going to wait for you to play this champion, and then I am going to pick you apart and snowball an advantage out of a counter pick in the top side. And we've seen this with his Darius, right, guys? You know, we've seen he's played a variety of these champions that have been like oftentimes ranged damage dealers. He's 100% in his win rate on Twisted Fate. He played the Tristana counter matchup into Gnar. I mean, he's played Akali, right? He's played Olaf. He's played Jace. A lot of his games have also just been Cassante Udyr games, because that's what his team needs. And those have been very lane dominant picks that have a lot of utility later on. But he really is incredibly versatile as a player, because it's like he can basically do anything. AP champs, fighters, tanks, like whatever you need him to do, he's going to do. And that's what I love about Keen. What I don't love about Keen is how he chokes in the playoffs.
And the odd international fucking
any playoff
every now and then.
Any playoff.
Yeah, it's true.
That's where he
it's
chokes.
True.
Any playoff is where Keen's skill goes to die. You know, at least Zeus, you know, now he's won Worlds. Zeus at least used to make it to the finals before choking.
Yes.
Keen, if he just smells a playoff bracket, he has an allergic reaction and needs to be resuscitated. So it's unfortunate. I really think the nerves get to him even after all these years. He's a very experienced player, but he's also the only Korean top laner to ever lose to North America in a best of 5.
Here's why I actually low-key think that MSI changing format has sort of like saved League of Legends for me. Because normally when you thought before about the spring split and then you thought about MSI, the problem with it was, famously, if you're like me and you, elitists, there's just the one LCK LPL match. That's all you're waiting for, is the final, basically, or a semi if they get upset in the group stage. Bro, when you consider in 2 months is when MSI will be fully underway, imagine a world, Monty, where we're going to get double elim best of 5 games between like BLG, Gen.G, T1, maybe JDG is the other one. Mate, this could be fucking amazing this time. I can't wait. That's going to be a banger. For real, that tournament is going to be my favorite every year, I can tell. It's going to be so dope. I'm looking forward to that already.
Yeah, it's going to be great. And it's also played in a very short time frame, too. So you got a lot of good games
love
really
that
quickly.
Too. Feels like CS. Exactly.
Yeah.
Just playing match after match after match. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, get a lot of good games very quickly. And, you know, especially because, and I will segue into this now. Spoiler, guys, I'm releasing new power rankings this week. G2 is going up on those power rankings. You know why?
You have to.
Because everyone else is a clown fiesta.
Yep.
Guys, all the other regions are fucking clown fiestas. So, like, LCK and LPL have a pretty soft, you know, mid-table. So there are real questions about, like, is G2 now top 8 in the world? That's a real question we have to ask, which I
totally
think
plausible. Yeah,
I think the answer is yes. I think the answer is they are probably 8 right now. Which is weird, but it's just because a lot of the other teams that we thought might be good have in some ways dropped the ball, right? The surprising surge of FPX aside, NIP looks incredibly fraudulent. LNG looks incredibly fraudulent. Kwangdong died. KT and D Plus are fraudulent. So it's like there's 3 teams in Korea who are probably better, and maybe 4 teams in China.
At the moment, people were having that. Well, I guess it was technically at the end of the LEC split. That big discussion where all those coaches were just talking about how they think the global level of league is worse, and eye test, it looks ass. Monty, bro, that fucking Cloud9 Shopify game.
I haven't watched
just close
it yet.
the LCS. Close the LCS down. Spoiler, I'll tell you right now, right? Shopify basically had this game won, and then they throw right in the other guy's Cloud9's base, and then Cloud9 just wins the game. It's so fucking insane. And the worst thing is, there's a clip you can go watch where Dom actually calls it as it's about to happen. He actually calls since this is NA, this team that's Shopify, the team that's winning will probably lose now into a throw, and then they literally do it on screen as he says it, just in time. It's so funny because it's the joke is, it's like he finally can read the matrix of LCS, code, it's so good.
my stream keeps trying, Thorin. So the new thing that happens on my stream, by the way, when I'm streaming,
low-key, Shopify Rebellion is the best non-playoff LCS team.
I fucking love Shopify.
They're so good. How are they not in the playoffs? They brought the amount of games they're in is so egregious, isn't it? It's so insane, mate. It's so insane. Low-key, Insanity actually is one of the best reasons to watch the LCS for real.
Yeah,
he's actually really entertaining to watch. I'm telling you.
So the new meme on my stream, and we have these raccoon emotes, is that my Twitch chat now demands that I feed the trash to the raccoons because they want to see because I'm trying to be the curator of the best games and bangers only. Yes. So now they're just feed the raccoons, and they just spam all these animated raccoon emotes that I have with trash cans and demand to be fed. So they've been trying to get me to feed them that Cloud9 Shopify game, which I probably will do maybe tomorrow.
Reaction to the end is going to be amazing, mate. The reaction to the end will be worth it. Don't worry.
So it has been a fun thing that's been going on with my stream, guys. So yeah. I will probably check out that game.
Unfortunately, this is where no amount of beseeching content creators or fans, vice versa, in the other direction is ever going to help. I will say, guys, I know this might sound sad, but low-key, in-depth analytical content, so in other words, the content you all pretend to watch but don't ever click on or support, that content is cooked in esports, guys, and I'll tell you why right now. Because if you just go to YouTube and you look at the channels of Dom, LS, anyone, the joke is, it isn't actually, except I do it for excellence reasons, just because I want to see these things exist in the world. Technically, the opportunity cost isn't worth my time doing a 2-hour interview with someone in Reflections. All I should do, literally, for the same hits, if that's all it's about, hits and ad revenue, is I should just do a react video of my thoughts on Doublelift drama. That's the world we've created, guys. True. The incentive structure we've created is just a bunch of
you probably should do that as well, honestly.
Okay, I actually should. And by the way, I probably will start doing more of that stuff, because I will say that is the one thing I have always thought we all did fail to learn from Call of Duty, which is that essentially everyone gets their beak wet when drama happens. You all just jump in with your little video, and then everyone gets to have a bunch of videos watched. So I think that is underutilized, to be fair, as well.
Yeah, I absolutely think you should do that, because you're also very good at dissecting. First off, you could probably just literally make a couple of messages and figure out the truth behind that situation. It'd probably take you 10 minutes. And then number 2, you also you're very good at intellectually dissecting the bullshit, because you're a journalist, and systematically showing that this has to be lies. So yes. I think if you apply yourself, you could actually make some good content. So I would encourage you, in fact, to do that.
How many times as well, by the way, it's not even that you need the inside info. You just compare their own statements Doublelift, and they always just tell them themselves, mate, every fucking time. The joke is the most unreliable narrator in Doublelift's life is Doublelift. He's going to say shit that even he doesn't agree with. The LCS thing, that might be the greatest one of all time, where he went from he did one stream that was and then it was amazing, it was historic, we were all in there and we all agreed to everything, and then he goes wait a minute, I don't actually agree with any of these demands. What are you talking? Who are you arguing with? I mean, bro, at some point in time, I imagine Doublelift is going to actually have some Tyler Durden moment where he goes, who's this Doublelift prick mess up my life, you lang peck. Wait a minute, you're me? Holy shit. I know it's mental in it.
The funniest thing is, you've seen the movie /musical Chicago, right? You know the song where in the film it's Richard Gere's character, who is the lawyer who is trying to recreate the series of events and saying like, oh, it's the gun, we both reach for the gun, to make it look like she didn't actually just murder him in cold blood. That's what Lena's like with Doublelift. That's exactly the same scenario, is that it's just like, he can't even speak for himself. He's like looking over. He's like, isn't that how it happened? It's like that fucking scene from Chicago.
Oh, it's mad, isn't it? Because you know the weirdest thing as well is people do this thing. This is why I can't handle the gaslighting. Because Doublelift lived his own life. If he ever remembers any story, people go, wow, Doublelift has a great memory. It's like, can't even remember what he said like 2 days ago, you morons. What are you talking about? He has one of the worst. By the way, he's actually proof of why I actually do my system. I'll give people a little bit of like breaking the fourth wall for a second. Right? Do you know the saddest thing of all time, Monty, is I could make my interviews like unbeatable. All you have to do is what real TV does. You take the same interview I did and just edit out the question. So instead of me doing that big long setup question, it would just be like, 60-minute style. A voice would just go, and what did you think about when you left the team? And they would have still asked all the setup, like so the player asked the same question, but it would just look so slick, wouldn't it? It wouldn't be me. You wouldn't have to worry about my, you just get all the answers. What people don't know is when I ask those questions, this is the maddest detail of all, Monty. People think I'm talking for the sake of it. The joke is half the time what I'm saying is helping the player himself even remember his own career. Like when I'm telling him, and then you were in the semi-finals and people thought actually Immortals was going to win that one, but then you guys were. The joke is half the time the player in his brain's going, shit, I'm glad he said that because I can't. But then it's making him go, yeah, oh, that's right. And then we did pick that, didn't we? Like most of these pros don't even remember their own careers, guys. It's actually a fucking joke. It's like that one, the best example ever is when Anders from Counter-Strike, the commentator, once told a story like, and then I said this. I was like, no, Anders, you got that story wrong. It was the other way around. The other guy said that and you replied. And Anders was like, oh, yes, you're right. And I'm like, Anders, how do I remember your life better than you? I'm not even in this story. I'm just like in the room. And I'm leader to Anders in this analogy, I've just realized, which is a terrifying concept, but okay. That's all good, I guess. It's all good. By the way, low key, the only good thing about Flashpoint 2, Monty, was just those like when the day would finish, because there was nothing else to do, we would just go into that like hall area and just have like essentially like an unofficial off-air Joe Rogan podcast for 4 hours. Everyone was just talking about all like mad shit. Like, yeah. But sadly, they could never be on camera, guys. It was too much like base, like conspiracy stuff. But it was some amazing combos. I can't lie. We were going deep as fuck. It was like a full Joe Rogan experience.
Just drinking beers. Playing Scythe,
watching
Blazing Saddles.
No, we had some bangers, yeah.
We were just playing Scythe, the board game, having ridiculous conversations, going to the gym they put in there.
Yeah. They Live. Watch that one.
Oh, yeah, They Live. That was great, too. Because we had a projector on the wall, so we would just pick movies and sit there and watch them and drink. It was a good time. It was a good time while we were all stuck in Twickenham Stadium, the Marriott attached to Twickenham Stadium for 3 straight weeks. And not able to
sad
go
thing
outside.
Is, though, I will say, Monty, that part was a bit of a bummer. That was one of those moments when you realise like showbiz isn't as glamorous as you think. Because Monty, Twickenham is like where like the fucking like England rugby team plays. So like I was thinking like this is going to be insane, and then when you go there, like. Mate, remember, I've been to all those American sports, like modern facilities, like the fucking Barclays Center. Like, mate, it's not even close. Like, this looks really old compared to that, guys. Like, outside it looks all right, but inside it's like you're decades behind. So sadly, it wasn't as super high tech as I hoped. Unfortunately, I had like a romantic ideas of what it might be like. It was just all right at the end.
To be fair, those new American stadiums are like SoFi and Barclays are like they're the Chase Center are like next level good.
Yes.
Agreed. All right. Do you want to talk a little bit about LEC?
Yeah, let's do it.
Because I do
actually think, by the way, here's the thing people have missed about LEC. I'm amazed at this. I know people were a bit down on the last split because obviously like G2 was just too far ahead of everyone. But they've missed this. Just take G2 out the equation. And actually, I think the parity in the league is insane, mate. Like, you can see right now, dude, a lot of people can beat a lot of people in the LEC right now. Like, there's not that many. Like, remember, we're in a world where, in theory, teams like Fnatic are top teams. Dude, Fnatic could drop a game to a lot of, like, most of the squads in the league. I feel like this is going to be a crazy split. I think this split will be mental for the standings, mate. I think it's going to be all over the place.
Yeah, and, I think one of the positive aspects is that maybe Carmine Corp might be, I mean, they're not going to be good guys, but they look Like
they're going to win some games eventually. Come on, they're doing it again. They start out with like kills every fucking game. Upset looks all right, and then they just lose the game, don't they? I don't know how. Every fucking time. But yeah, they're going to win some eventually. It looks like they can trip over and win one eventually, mate.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely had a fighting chance in the game that they played against G2. They had a pretty substantial advantage. Yeah. It's just that G2 is a significantly better team, and G2 is excellent about knowing their win conditions and playing from behind. And Seiken is a player who it doesn't matter how much gold you give to because he is utterly incapable of carrying a game, which is depressing. But just
cannon.
Yeah. Karmine Corp is kind of just where we left them at the end of winter, which is like, our prediction.
Sakama still doesn't give a fuck either. He just fucking chilling still, isn't he? I know, fucking hell, mate. What's going on?
If you look at where Karmine Corp is right now, and we said this, we're like, what I said was my prediction was, I think this team is actually going to get better from where they were in winter.
Yeah.
Even without Yamato's help, because we could already see that trajectory starting, and it was hard to imagine how they could possibly be worse than they were. So I think this roster probably still doesn't make playoffs. I mean, Rogue is clearly the most terrible team in this league. And Karmine Corp, I don't think is good enough to kind of squeak into the playoffs again. Like, I still think they'll be battling in the bottom. Maybe they get there over Giant X or somebody like that. We'll see. But they're not going to be mid-table. They're not going to be the best team in this league. But as for a lot of the other teams, I suppose one of the pleasant surprises has been Heretics, who took a pretty legit win off of Fnatic. And, I hate to say this, Thorin, but...
Oh, it's better without Perks. It really is. They just are, mate. It's true. They're just a better team without Perks right now.
What I will say about the Heretics win was that Zweiru guy, Zweiru, I think is how you say his name, Zweiru, his play against Fnatic, he was very creative in his Nico play. He was really quite good in the way that he was playing Nico and the way that he was using cannon minions and honey fruit and pretending to be Smolder at times in order to provoke engages. That worked really well. It worked really well. It was a pretty massive lead that Fnatic had in that game, and I think due to a better draft, whereas like even if you get ahead with Renekton and Volibear, you have very limited options to engage on Smolder with the amount of crowd control and peel that they had for that champion. It's very hard to get into the back to kill Smolder with that composition. And the fact that Smolder exists allows teams to create these enormous comeback stories, which is not particularly fun. What is your take on Smolder, Thorin? Because this champion is deeply unfun to watch in the professional scene, in my opinion.
I mean, the problem I have is this. I'm not usually the person who goes too mad about, like, it's just broken, get out of the game. Like this, like in LEC specifically, it's actually outrageous how much this champion looks like one-dimensional as fuck. And the worst thing about it is this, Monty, like, what's the counterplay? Like, because I'm sick of that Yumi story. It can't be the Yumi thing again, Monty, of like, just don't let it ever get even into the game. Like, that's not counterplay, you idiot. Counterplay isn't. It can just never get out of lane. Like that, everyone gets out of lane. What are you talking about? So my problem is just that it looks way too powerful in some of these comps, mate. Some of these ones where people are like, we can deal with it. You couldn't deal with it. You never had any way of dealing with it, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, and I think teams are looking for answers, right? Because Smolder is a piece of shit in lane. Like, he actually just ridiculous. Is fucking terrible and has, like, you can't gank for him because he doesn't do anything when you gank for him. So basically, you kind of just have to hope he doesn't lose super bad and die a bunch of times. But here's the thing, Thorin. Even if Smolder gets behind, at the professional level, what that means is that, like, what? You get to 225 stacks a couple minutes later than you would have anyway.
Exactly. That's what I mean. You're always going to sort of hit the power spike almost, right? You're always going to get to the point where you're strong.
It feels like if you're having a good Smolder game and you're completely dominating, well, then you can actually hit 225 at 21 and a half, 22 minutes into the game. If you're having a terrible fucking Smolder game, you're still a professional player, And what is it now? 25 minutes, 26 minutes, like worst case scenario almost. And that's if the other team does a very good job of focusing, keeping the Smolder down, winning lane super hard, diving the Smolder, you know, putting all your resources in there. You buy like what? 3 minutes? You know what I mean? It's not huge. And teams have been saying, okay, well, what do we do into this? You know, G2's solution was, hey, remember we played a lot of Kog'Maw last year. Let's play Kog'Maw again. Kog'Maw was actually buffed recently. So let's play hyper carries. Let's play Zeri, right? Let's play Kog'Maw. Let's try and match this with another champion that can really just benefit from weak laning into a strong late game if it's unharassed. Or you have to focus all your resources on the Smolder. And
like, I hope by the
it
time
feels
MSI
bad.
comes, this isn't a factor, mate, because I don't want to live in a world where it's like, let's see if this ADC is going to go fucking mental on this one champion. Like, it can't just be that every game.
It's
Come
just-
on.
it's just the-
Because, bro, as much as people hated on Zeri, it still had skill involved, though. Fucking hell, at least, like, you got to have some talent on that one. Like, this just feels too, like, fucking, like, it just, once it gets rolling, it's too good, isn't it? It's just too good, mate.
I mean, you just press Q, and then you hit them with the Q, and then it splashes all over the enemy champion with percent health, damage over time, true damage, and then the more stacks you get, the higher the threshold goes where you just execute them.
I will give the disclaimer that if you think about what I've admitted on this show, I have always been the sort of person who played roles like support, ADC. So I obviously have a bias here, Monty. But the least fun thing in all of League of Legends is when you're any champion that isn't like a fucking mage mid laner, and then people do stuff like come in and they have all those mage abilities and items that just splash shit all over everyone. And then you're just like, so wait a minute, so the counter players don't be on the same screen. And now you've got all like champions that aren't even mages that do that now, mate. Like, that has always been the most ass thing, because I've always thought if you're playing, like, I come from Counter-Strike, if I'm playing in the middle of a fight, it's like, but what did I do wrong? I was just stood next to the guy who got hit. Like, what? Like, what am I supposed to do? Just not be in the server? So I think it's mad, mate. It's like, the problem I have always is this. I've always said this, Monty. I've been super consistent my whole time. It's why I've made those jokes over the years of maybe some champions should have like music rhythm game components, because I don't mind the idea that like the champion can be super duper skilled and do amazing shit. Obviously, in a way, I want that. I want people like Fakers and Rookies and Chovies to do the most crazy plays, but I want it to be really difficult, though. Like, I want to know that was like super skillful and it was hard and there was counterplay and there was moments when if you'd have made the right decision, it wouldn't work. My problem with these champions when they're busted is, that's why I gave the example of the Zeri and the Yumi, is that when they're really, really busted, it doesn't even look like you could do anything if you're the other guy. You know what I mean? That's when it feels a bit too like an auto win to me.
I think the Yumi comparison is good, because the problem with Smolder is that he's such an easy champion. And he's literally designed for people to feel like, for bad players to feel like they are powerful when they suck at laning, and like to give them false hope in an infinitely stacking champion. That the problem is like, if you nerf this champion, the bad players who are intended to play this champ, you know, if you say raise the number of stacks you need, like he's just like bad players are never going to get the amount of stacks they need to hit that threshold in solo queue. But the problem is that the stacks right now are so low that in a professional game, like I don't think that Riot believed that players would be hitting 225 stacks in 21 minutes. Like, that's unacceptable. Because it gives you way too much power and comeback potential over the game, because it's not like we're seeing, they're coming back from 1,000 gold down. Like, we're seeing like 5,000-6,000 gold deficit comebacks at 25 minutes. Like, it's not great. You know, it's not great. And it's far too easy, but I don't know how they get themselves out of this bind unless they like add more kind of like thresholds to the queue. Frankly, one solution may be to move that ability over to his W instead, the execute, and then just have the percent true damage on his Q, so that you actually have to hit both abilities to get them both. Because right now, just having a easy to hit AoE Q that applies both things is stupid. Like the W is a lot easier to dodge, so it would make sense, I think, to put some of the stacking effects on his W instead, so that you have to hit multiple things in order to get what you want.
Yes.
So it's grim, though. Like, I'm not a fan of the meta that is developing as a result of this champion. It's also possible that when they've said they're going to buff crit items, and one of the big problems right now is that crit AD carries aren't very good. So the question then becomes, like, what happens if crit items are buffed and you can play late game crit ADs like Jinx into Smolder? Does that kind of like balance out the Smolder power level? I don't know what the answer to that is, but it's a possibility.
By the way, we've discussed it in the past, but what I will ask you now is, do you actually think Riot ever will, in some way, like limit or make themes, or like MTG style, you have like a limited set for a season? So do you think they'll do that? Because I do start to wonder, like, not only have you got too many champions, but now you also have them where it's like, this is the ultimate whack-a-mole. If you make one OP, like another one pops up, and then you nerf that one, then another one. There's always going to be, it feels like, as with this many champions, there's going to be some variation you can't have planned for, right?
I mean, I would like them to do that. I would like them to have it, maybe, Thorin, I think maybe we can say that this is a movement that they're planning on doing, because you'll notice that with ranked seasons, they've now started to make more ranked seasons every year for the average player in solo queue. So it used to be like the year was the season, and now there's like 2, and I guess like now they're going to make 3 potentially. And with that in mind, it would make sense to potentially do limited champion pools for each of the splits during a given year. And in that case, you could just have, a certain pool of champions. I think frankly, Thorin, I've said this, I think they have to do it. The question is, how long do they want new players to play this game? Because the barrier of entry is too fucking high. With 160
By the way,
champions.
I even think that story, we all laugh at them now, but all those stories about Jojo Pion, where because he really did come for like Fortnite or whatever the fuck, he just didn't know anything about like champions he hadn't ever played before. Yes. Bro, he'd been like a pro player playing for like a year at this point. He still hadn't, like, he didn't know things like what does Gangplank do. So like, I agree with you. Like, the information burden's insane for a brand new player now. Like, that's actually even half of why a veteran could even stick around, because all the interactions. And then also, like, I'll just throw this out there, is if you're going to have that many fucking champions, like, surely logically eventually it's going to get so that, like, I mean, I'm amazed this hasn't happened yet, but when you buff certain ones, you're just going to get scenarios where there'll be like champions from 7 years ago, and it's like, if that champion's at all like it used to be, isn't it mega unfair to the brand new player now? He didn't play 8 years ago, so what are we punishing him for? Not knowing what something that no one uses in the game used 8 years ago? Like, what? Like, what? You know what I mean? Like, what's the game become at that point in time? Like, to me, it actually would be logical to swap it up and have like a limited set of things. Also, let's be real, Monty. Riot Games have done this thing from day one. You remember back in the day when they used to even claim there wasn't roles, and that they wouldn't acknowledge there was roles like jungle in case that made people not creative, even though the joke is, compared to Dota, a game where you could do that, and jungle literally did change over the years. Obviously, it's always just been a jungler and a top laner and an ADC and a support, minus season 1, basically, guys. So the biggest joke of all is Riot already did this like in a soft way anyway, Monty, like the way they buff the assassins every fucking Worlds. Like, how many times before Worlds did they just buff the ones that they thought everyone wanted to see played? Like, you're already doing it anyway. You might as well just do it like overtly. Just admit it's your plan. Because wouldn't you be fine with that? I'm sure you tactically would even enjoy that, right, Monty? If you knew that, like, all right, spring's the one where they're going to do like a mage like, mid lane meta, then in summer they're maybe going to switch to like assassins with the, what? If you just kind of knew, you could also then like plan your team, plan your coaching. You could do so many cool things around it, I feel like.
I mean, I think you would have kind of a balance of all champion types. Like, I don't think you'd like make mage season or assassin season. Like, you have a few assassins, a few control mages, viable every single season, so you get a little bit of diversity. But I think it would be very interesting, and I think it'll be better for a viewing experience as well, because we know, Thorin, that one of the major reasons why people watch professional esports is because they want to get better at the game. But the thing is that with so many champions in the game, it's hard to get better if you play a different, many different champions than the professional players are currently playing in the meta. Like, but if there's a more limited pool of champions available, the overlap between the average player and the pro player becomes greater with fewer champions, which means that they're going to be more excited to potentially watch esports because it's going to be more reflective of their own experience and an ability to learn about the game, right? And I think that it's just pro play is just so different from solo queue that does hinder at times. And we know that Riot's goal has been to unify solo queue in the professional scene, because that's why they did things like kill lane swaps, right? And so if this is Riot's goal, like, you have to be able to onboard new players in an easier way, and having more limited champion pools and therefore a gentler learning curve every ranked season, I think makes a lot of sense. Now, what you have to deal with is that all those one tricks out there who only want to play one champion and have 10 skins for that champion, who are going to be really angry that they can't play those champions in ranks. You know, maybe most of the time, potentially, right? So I think there's a question of, how does Riot, if they want to implement a system like this, avoid a bunch of the player base getting super angry that the money that they've spent, is locked out of the game for 2/3 of every year. So I don't know how you deal with that. Maybe you offer like refunds potentially on skins, into RP or whatever, as a one-time thing when they announce this, kind of like what Smite did for Smite 2, where they like are giving their players a bunch of currency for the number of skins that they had in Smite 1 to spend in the new game.
I'm surprised they haven't thought of the obvious cynical move, which goes like this. I'm sure they did the same thing in America, so you could probably relate. But in the UK, famously, Monty, when you would go to those physical game shops, I mean, there was even a brand called Game, believe it or not, that you could buy video games from in the old box, like back in the days before Steam. When you would go in those shops, Monty, one of the major things, I've no doubt they must have done this in America, that became a massive model for them, was they would buy the game secondhand. Your old games. You could sell them your old games for credit.
I did that.
But famously, they would obviously make the exchange rate utterly absurd. Like, essentially, you were like traded in for like 1/10 of the value, then they would sell it for half the value, and that was like the markup margin, right? The joke is, why is League? Remember, we know Riot Games and Tencent don't give a flying fuck about the consumer. Why have they not thought of that system where you can cash in your old skins to get new skins, but they just take them back at like 1/10 of the cost, then charge you appropriately for the new ones? Like, why don't they just fuck all their own fans on that and just make even more? I'm amazed they haven't thought that one through. That's an easy one right there. That's an easy one right there. And add gacha components, of course, to every game. Just every game gacha all day long. Bobby Kotick showed me the truth, mate. It's all gacha all the way down.
I'm sure Tencent is loving that salivating at the thought of gacha League of Legends. I'm sure they're all in. By the way, Thorin, this is a tangent. And we can't talk about this on the Four Horsemen because we're not going to have another show for a little bit. But one of the things that has to be said is that, guess what the Overwatch community found out recently? That Overwatch competitive is going to be at the Esports World Cup. It's finally happened.
Yeah.
Of course, it was obvious to everybody that this was going to happen, but the announcement has finally been made.
What was the response? Give me a flavor, Tencent. What was it like? What was their response?
Well, of course, these people who have been massive champions of all of these various social causes, their response, as far as I can tell from the competitive Overwatch subreddit, is, well, what are we supposed to do? Just like not watch? This is the reality now. This is the reality now with ESL operating the circuit. They're owned by Saudi Arabia. But what can we do? Nothing, guys. This is just our new reality. So they've completely just swallowed it, basically. And they said, well, because Saudi Arabia owns the circuit, well, then it just makes sense that an event happens in Saudi Arabia, and it doesn't matter if we don't like it or not, because we're still going to watch Overwatch Esports.
The maddest thing about this is, like, I'm actually in a fucked up way, Monty. If this had just been the tone the whole time, then fine, okay. Yeah, it's like, all right, whatever. Who cares about the business side? Let's just do the tournaments. But the problem is, it's so fucking jarring as a juxtaposition to what these people did on Chex Notes, every minor topic for the last 5 years.
Exactly.
Like, if people don't know, I'll give you the best example I can think of right now, which is, you might know that within ESL, they obviously, there's that company they work with called Key, right? Which is like mixture of like Intel funding with some ESL shit. Basically, the idea is it's one of those orgs that's about like inclusivity and diversity and all those buzzwords, right? And so one of the things they heavily pushed was things like they had like an Key pledge where you'd pledge you wouldn't be toxic to people in server or whatever, you know, all shit like that. And famously, there was even an event, I've told this story before by the numbers, there was an ESL event, the last event I ever worked for ESL, where they actually asked us, like the Soviet Union, that we had to sign this fucking pledge, Monty, like some fucked up thing, so that then if after the fact we said something naughty, we'd sort of fucked ourselves by essentially signing a contract saying we wouldn't do it, which is like, what? I remember even saying to people like, Anders, what are we doing here, mate? Like, why am I doing some fucked up like pledge of allegiance to a company that isn't even the one running the tournament? And the reason why that's mental, Monty, is because I can tell you, you know, a certain incident in 2018 where I explained the etymology of a word. Well, Key famously came out and did a tweet thread where they said at the time that we can never forget the history of words like that and what it's meant to people. But the same company presumably wants you to forget the history of what Saudi Arabia is doing now, right now, literally to alive people right now that are then no longer alive due to Saudi Arabia. People at their border, people in their... There's people in prison for fucking tweets, guys. The joke is this. In a way, Monty, I actually realised the most straight fire joke of all I should have come to was this. Actually, what am I talking about? Actually, isn't the competitive Overwatch subreddit exactly the sort of people who'd want to align with the Saudis? They also wanted people in prison over tweets.
That's true.
Not bad.
And not only that,
that wasn't bad.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And also, it's not even just tweets. It's like retweeting or liking tweets. People are in prison for that. It's not even like making the original tweets, guys. It's wild, which also lines up with competitive Overwatch, where liking and retweeting tweets also is a condemnation.
I also appreciate you are right, Monty. Essentially, the Saudi Arabian state has proven that thing you can put in your Twitter, like, you know, RTs do not make equal endorsement, doesn't work. That actually turns out they do. They've decided they do. You go to prison. You literally go to prison. By the way, that's also so sad because low key, like, that's like, obviously it's bad enough you do the tweet yourself, but imagine going to prison because you're like, you retweeted my tweet or something like. What are you in for? Retweeting a Thorin tweet. Oh, bloody hell. Like, that's mental, innit? I know. What a world. What a world. What a world. I love that, though. I do love the idea that they instantly capitulate. They don't even... Here's the maddest thing of all, Monty. All they have to do... Remember, it's not like people on Reddit have any power. They could still just all complain, like, in fake way, Monty, and go, this is unacceptable, I hate this, and then just secretly watch it. But instead, they even publicly capitulate. There's not even a reason to publicly... You could still pretend you're against it and watch it, but these fucking idiots are so stupid. Like, this is how you know it was all for show the whole time, wasn't it? It was just performative.
They're like, well, I have to type that I don't agree with this, but, well, I'm just going to watch it anyway. And you know the funny thing about this justification, Thorin, is that they can't seem to understand the difference, because when people say, like, well, you know, ESL operates this entire competitive circuit right now, and they're owned by Saudi Arabia. Okay. You know, there's a difference between supporting IEM Cologne, which is explicitly not a sports washing effort by the Saudi Arabians, and the Esports World Cup, which is very specifically a sports washing endeavor that is directly run by the government. And like, you may not be, you know, if you want to watch Counter-Strike, you can watch almost all of the rest of the circuit, and you're like, well, technically, I guess they're making maybe some small amount of profit by me watching this, you know, Counter-Strike or Counter-Strike existing. But you have to understand that the real danger here comes from when they have the events in Riyadh, and that's when we see the sports washing actually take place, because it's the giant prize pools, and it's the rolling out the red carpet for everybody, and the luxury that they lavish on people so that people will say nice things about them. And they want to present this very PR'd, on-camera friendly version to the rest of the world, when the reality is that there is a very, very strong track record of severe human rights violations, murder of journalists in foreign countries in brutal ways, proxy wars that are being fought, not even very discreetly by Saudi Arabia. So, and people will say, well, what about the U.S. government? Guys, the U.S. government isn't fucking sponsoring a tournament in order to make itself look better. Guys, they're not. They're not doing that. Like, yeah, we've had U.S. Army and Air Force.
How many people have fucked that up as well. Because you should see how many people have told Richard Lewis, you wouldn't say anything about the U.S. Army. It's like, he literally did. He already did it. You go look it up. He actually did call out the U.S. Army for being involved because they were sponsoring ESL, U.S. Air Force, the last few years.
Yeah. And it's also different to have one sponsor as opposed to it literally being like a party for your country's PR in your country.
Here's the thing, Monty, as well. It's one thing for the US Air Force to sponsor a tournament. The Saudi Arabian state owns the tournament. They own the whole thing, guys, lock, stock, and barrel, like from top to bottom.
Yeah, and therefore they can.
Here's another good one for the competitive Overwatch type guys. So you know they're exactly the sort of wankers, Monty, who would go mental. Like, you have to remove all emotes like tryhard and PogChamp in case someone feels uncomfortable. Well, I'll tell you what might feel uncomfortable. Imagine being an Israeli player in Saudi Arabia and having to have bodyguards and then having stuff happen like the crowd mics get muted when you're on stage so people don't boo you. Would you feel comfortable doing that? By the way, what does a pro player, again, I said the same thing about Russians when they came to the West in Counter-Strike. What does the pro player have to do with those wars, by the way? When did they ever kill anyone? They didn't. But somehow we're totally fine with those people being put in totally unsafe, potentially uncomfortable circumstances. They have to carry the can. So I think it's just a gross, mate. The whole thing's fucking just gross in it. Because as you say, it's like they didn't even like fake protest, Monty. The second that they saw which way the wind was blowing, they were like, oh, well, I guess what the hell? Now I love the Saudi Arabian state. Like, it's mental in here. These people are so shameless, it's wild. Because like all I'm going to say is this, guys. If you guys couldn't handle Semler tweets, then how can you handle MBS, you fucking clowns? You have a way you think he has killed people. Semler's just done tweets. You're talking about like, this is dangerous. What about people like their safety? Killing people. They're in prison for like 40 years. Like, you can't possibly, in that scenario, you have to literally just give up being mad at people if you're cool with this. Because like, what's the fucking standard? What's the precedent we're setting here, guys?
The fans keep getting esports for free, and that's what they want.
That's true.
Because they don't want to pay for it. And this is the price. The price is Saudi Arabia, guys. The price is sports washing. This is the price you all want to pay because you won't pay for esports. If the fans had made this a sustainable ecosystem, we would not fucking be here. We would not.
Oh, by the way, one of Richard's shrewdest points I think he's ever made on this Saudi thing, mate, because I actually think for real he's nailed the future, is, he always tells that story about how they want it to be. I forget if it's literally like the Qiddiya project or whether it's like the Saudis just with the public investment fund. But they want to have it so that eventually teams will go to Saudi Arabia. They'll also like boot camp there before events, and loads of the event finals will be there. And the notion is essentially it'll become a fixture. Your team's just at loads of the year. Like, I think it's obvious at this point, Monty, you just extend the concept. And what they're going to do is the same way that Riot took over esports by giving everyone stuff for free and covering all the costs. I think the Saudis will just do that. And I'll tell you what, mate, the second the Saudis tell you something like, you know what, maybe if your team is based in this country, we give you a stipend for your salaries. These orgs will line up at the door, mate. Can you imagine if you told like Team Liquid, you know what, why don't you just have the same org? You own it all, but we pay the costs. Like, that's like with Riot came into League of Legends. I can tell you, mate, when people used to get paid $1,000 a month, if Riot said they'll cover like the 25K a year, that was like fucking dollar signs and all the EU owners' eyes like ding, 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 ding. Like, I'm in on League of Legends, like, of course, because essentially you get all the upside and none of the downside. So I think the Saudis will just do that eventually. And the joke is, I think within like 2 or 3 years, there won't even be, except on our shows, there won't even be discussion of the Saudis. The Saudis will be the water in which we all swim as esports fish. Yep. You know what I mean?
I'll bring this back to League of Legends, Thorin, because I've got some predictions for you. So as we know,
if they actually do also run a straight fire double limb tournament in League of Legends, look, I might be hating on it politically, but I'll watch it. I'll watch the fuck out of that. Yeah, make it better than Worlds, and I'll watch. Don't worry about that.
I mean,
I'll watch the fuck out of it.
To bring it back to League of Legends, like, we are going to have a time in the summer this year where League of Legends is part of Esports World Cup, and the teams will go to play in it, as we've said, because that it will help their ranking for the massive prize pool that teams can win by performing well across all games.
Also, Monty, let's be real. We're talking like the West might do it. Asia isn't even going to have this discussion, bro. Like the IPL and LCK teams are just going to this event, boys. Like that's not even going to be some like struggle set. They're just going to be going. What are you talking? How much? Yes, I'll see you there. See you there. Then.
Let me put it this way. I don't think that Asian countries are overly invested in the they don't give a fuck, Arabic-Israeli power struggle of the Middle East. I don't think they can.
They don't even know where Yemen is, mate. They don't give a fuck. They don't care. They don't care at
all. But in any case, though, right, here's my prediction for you. So we know that Worlds is in Europe this year. We know that MSI is in China. Now, technically, we don't know this, but let's be real. We know that Worlds is in China next year because it's been
pretty likely, yes.
We had North America, we had Korea. It's going to be in Europe. China's the biggest region. It's got to be in China. It's definitely going to be in China. Now, in theory, here's the interesting conundrum. Next year, MSI should be in North America. Okay?
But you think it's going to be Saudi Arabia, though?
Riyadh. That's my guess. And here's why, Thorin. They've
already, especially if you're in a world also, let's be real. It's quite hard to run North American events now, mate. It's not like it's a great space at the moment anyway, right?
Yeah. And by the way, MSI has been in Brazil in the past, so it hasn't just been in major regions like the World Championship. And here's an extra little twist. Europe, LEC rebranded as not the League of Legends European Championship.
Yes. Yep.
It's now the League of Legends EMEA, which is Europe, Middle East, and Africa Championship. So now, technically,
the Africa one's such a reach, but fair play.
It doesn't matter.
It's all good.
Technically, having it in Riyadh is the equivalent of having it in Europe because it is now part of that region. So I would be, and because here's the thing, Thorin, I think that the Saudis will do everything in their power to move the dates of the Esports World Cup because it's similar enough right now. And remember, this lasts for like 2 months across a variety of games. And to move it into a position where MSI in May can chain directly into the rest of the Esports World Cup. So they kick off the Esports World Cup by hosting MSI for a month in May. And then in June, or at the end of May into June, that's when we start the rest of the Esports World Cup instead of in July. So that this is like the opening ceremony at the Olympics. Let's do this big LOL tournament. But hey, we got all these other events coming out next. And they pull out all the stops. Because here's the thing. No one is going to pay more money for that tournament than the Saudi Arabians.
Of course.
So I bet you anything. Riyadh MSI 2025. That's my goal. And I think, if I had to guess, I bet this deal's already been talked about if it's not already done, because I think they're like, well, let's try having this Esports World Cup tournament, see how the fans take it this year. And if everything goes well, then maybe we'll give you that MSI that you want and you're going to pay us a shit ton of money for in 2025.
No, it makes sense as well, since, as you're saying, they've already sent Mark Merrill out there. And if people don't know, when you pick those venues, like you have to book them like a year in advance sometimes. Like you don't just do it a month before the fucking tournament. Obviously, you have to know ages before that the logistics work. So it would make perfect sense for that. Like you say, just use this one as the test run. If it all goes well, then and also here's the other thing. I think Riot are smart enough to know that. Like here's the thing, Monty. I just think that because they did the LEC Neon thing, they just have to very carefully back into this. They can't just come straight out the gate like Saudi Arabia is great. We'll work with it. They have to just sort of gradually build into it. And I think what they're going to notice, sadly, is what we just talked about, is that when you run ESWC, if it's actually good, if it's actually like a good international tournament, we're all going to be loving it. So actually, at that point in time, we're all just going to accept it if real MSI is in Riyadh too, right? I mean, the real joke of it all is we already had it all in China anyway. So, like, is there really even a big moral qualm people have? I noticed, by the way, at this point in time, I'm just going to say this right now. It's not that people can't look into China. You're just all intentionally not doing it because you don't want to have a moral dilemma. So you just intentionally don't look into what goes on in those autonomous regions because you just know that they already own lock, stock, and barrel everything about League. So why look into it and then have to prick your conscience, as Henry VIII would say, before he chopped another person's head off? Although speaking of which, I could have made that way better. Wait, monarchs that chop people's heads off for just, because they don't like them. But enough about the people who own ESL. Whatever, you get the joke. Right? There's a joke there. If I worked on it a little bit more, we'll workshop that one. It's all good.
I mean, it's just a literal 1-to-1.
I mean, Richard, I can't lie. Here's where Richard does actually have a massive balls, guys. Remember, he actually is famous enough where, in theory, like if someone did say, how do we shut down 90% of criticism about Saudi Arabia? The answer is, get Richard Lewis in a Minecraft server. I did very carefully there because he switched to US. But the point is, yeah, that's really disturbing. And yeah, he has such balls, if you don't know, guys. He actually did, when ESL got bought by the Saudis, make like an image on his Discord, like the ESL, like IEM Khashoggi Masters or something. I mean, fair play to Richard. He's got some balls for it. You got to give it to him. It's a bit like back in the day when he was battling once with one of the NIP people. He did just tweet at this guy that like meme from fucking The Wire, like, like you got the briefcase, I got the shotgun. Like, I love it. You have to have characters like that in esports, guys. Just the character alone's worth following. He's like some fucked up carrying out the shield or something. I love it, mate. Good old Saudis.
So, to return to our beloved Europe, Middle Eastern, Africa regions, are there any other LEC teams?
Well, I'll tell you the obvious question. I've got a question for
by
you,
the way,
Monty.
guys, I gotta put this in there. This is the last thing. Riot denied a Middle Eastern attempt at buying the Astralis slot.
Yeah, Falcons, yeah.
So they wanted to buy the Astralis slot coming into this year. Riot said no. They are not going to say no again. And they changed the fucking name to Europe, Middle East, Africa for a fucking reason. And that's because they want this money in here eventually. Maybe just not this soon, right?
Yes.
But Falcons coming in, I think.
There's another thing, Monty. Being as in Counter-Strike, we talked about this on the Four Horsemen, if people want to watch that, the one we did with Tommy 2 episodes ago. Basically, we did a Four Horsemen about how in Counter-Strike, bizarrely, it's one of the only games that's not experiencing esports winter because there's so much money from the stickers at majors and the partner system that people are able to justify building super teams. I'll tell you what, Monty, from seeing how people have had like backlash against the Saudis buying people up in CS, I guarantee that won't happen in League, because in League, everyone knows there's fuck all money in LEC right now. Mate, I guarantee you if next year a Saudi org joins and spends big money putting big name players, they will be welcomed with open arms. It will be like one of those things where you take over, it's like the fucking Anschluss, people are just throwing flowers at you. But they won't give a fuck who you are, like, because at that point nobody has any money. It's all the ERL thing. Because there's the pivot I want to ask you about. The obvious team we have to talk about is this team, Monty. Mad Lions. Remember, this is why these splits are so quick, guys. We're supposed to believe after that first split that Mad Lions is the truth. They could have even won the league. They've shown everyone wrong. Well, here's the problem. Obviously, they didn't look that awesome in this opening week. So I want to get your take. What do you think is going to happen to Mad Lions this split? Because obviously, and let's be real, we're gonna do. Well, listen, mate, we've dealt with TSM fans and Brazilian fans. Like, we're gonna put fan overreaction out of the window for a moment. You can't let that stop us criticizing. Like, what do you think of this squad? Because I have to say, I actually think that split was just like they overperformed. They got lucky with the fucking Adam benching, and I don't think they're going to be as good, mate. Like I said this on Best Damn League Show, I think this team's going to be like 5th to 6th. They're not bad, but I think they'll just be like a decent team.
Well, they also, played a very close series against Fnatic, and arguably, that was an
could have lost that one too.
Yeah, that was an upset. That was an upset match. That I think you play that series 10 times, and Fnatic probably wins 7 or 8 of those. Mad Lions squeaked by in Game 5 of that series. In spite of the fact that they lost in the upper bracket to Fnatic.
Oh, they got murked, yeah. Yes.
So if you actually think the total game score was actually 4-3 in those playoffs in favor of Fnatic, because they 2-0'd them in the upper bracket. And then also the Adam benching was obviously like unfortunate. And even with the Adam benching and clearly that affecting BDS's method in which they play the game, they still barely beat BDS and got into the finals where they got kind of dumpstered by G2. So I think Mad Lions, I don't believe that this roster is going to continue at the current level of strength, especially with Frescoe and Supa in these positions. Like, if you ask, like, El Yoyo was great. last split. And Elyoyo's early game is wonderful. His pathing is wonderful. The way his team buys into where he is on the map and playing around his pressure is beautiful. And I think that's one of the best things about this team is because all of these players are newer. Elyoyo is clearly the captain. He's clearly the focal point of the team. And they are good at playing in the early game around that. Mirwin and Alvaro are good players. Like, I think that they have a future, but I just don't see a universe where Kreskawi and Supa are good enough. You know, in a way, this is kind of like the Team Liquid problem in LCS, where like your mid and AD carry, they're not as bad as APA and Yun, so I don't want to say that. They're clearly good enough to like get into the upper half of LEC and make a final even under kind of slightly suspicious circumstances. But this is a team that I think is going to be forever really held back and limited by the power of their AD carry and of their mid laner. And until changes are made at those positions, I think there's kind of a ceiling on how high this team can go.
That's my biggest problem with the whole team, basically. It's like I alluded to. It's a team that is just skewed by this enormous, like, almost the fucking gravity of the fan reaction around them that's making people, like, go one way or the other. Whereas the problem is, if you actually just look at this team and assess them, here's how it would go from a historical perspective. People didn't expect much of them because they were, like, lesser-known players, and some of them, by the way, weren't even that insane at the RL level. Then they've come up, they've performed way above the level you'd think. Look, they had a couple of scenarios that we're talking about, the Fnatic and BDS series, that maybe got them a bit further than you expected. But if you actually didn't have all this stupid fan reaction, just like BDS on a slightly lower scale, I could actually go loads of positives about this team. Like, I do think the coaching's pretty good. They have got like a coherent system, like you say, around Elyoyo. They clearly understand how they want to play. Even the way they played through the bot last split, I thought was quite interesting. So they never were in a disadvantage. Like, some of the players, top and support, are mega. But there has to be a bot. They're not G2. They're not like the best team with the best players, guys. So, like, it's totally reasonable to me that this won't be an elite team. Like, spoiler, I don't think this team will go to Worlds. I think this will be, like I say, like 5th team or 4th team or something. Like, I think that's fine. That's still way better than I thought. Like, I thought they were going to be the 10th best team. So it's at least cool to have a team. Like, for example, the thing I thought that was cool about the Maspert was at least they could actually win late game. Man, I'm sick of seeing the Vitality and Karmine Corp team get the early game and then just do nothing and lose the fucking game. So actually a team that can win late game is meaningful. The problem is, I'm with you. The player strength just caps them. And then the experience caps them. And then also, let's be real, the edge that they got in that first split because players had played together and already knew isn't there anymore. Like, now people have played the whole split. So I think that some of that edge goes away too. And then, like I said at the beginning of the episode when we talk about LEC, the parity is just crazy in the league right now. Like, a lot of teams, like, it feels like week to week to week. This BO1 part especially is mental. It just feels like you're putting the names in a hat. And then SCG2, who knows if you win the games or not. It's fucking all over the place right now.
Yeah, and I think G2, when we look at the game that they played against Mad Lions Koi, it was very convincing. I mean, that's where the Kog'Maw came out. The Kog'Maw was incredibly dominant in the laning phase, like, and Mad Lions Koi really didn't do much or didn't present much of a threat against G2. And part of that is, like, Caps is still on a heater, man. Like, Caps still looks really fucking good.
Oh, yes.
He really ramped up in the end of the regular, like, look, his best of ones were a little ropey. They were a little ropey in winter, but he was coming off the break. But basically, he powered up throughout winter split, and he is still looking fantastic. So this G2,
he's even gotten dope on those fucking Nico like sneaks. He's actually gotten really good at those now.
Yeah,
he's good, isn't he?
I mean,
his minion sneaks are actually legit now.
He still kind of ints a little bit at times on the Nico, or like, but I mean, he always makes plays, and this is a guy who has put together some really, really good games so far. Like, his Ari game against BDS was excellent. And the rest of the team continues to be strong. Mickey X is still good. Hansama, I guess all he has to do is fucking play Smolder or Kog'Maw in late game hyper carry. So they found a comfortable place for him to be in this roster. Broken Blade still looks very good by all standards. So I think G2, I mean, they, like I said earlier, I think are legitimately should be considered a top 8 team in the world right now. And I would tip them as a favorite against most of like the 4th place teams in Korea and LPL at this point in time. Because, like, I don't think that FPX necessarily is better than G2. Like, I don't think that's reasonable. Especially if we're thinking about it in a best of 5. I certainly don't think like fucking KT or D+ are better than G2. Hanwha probably is. but the rest of the teams, like, you start to get out of that upper echelon and it gets pretty murky. Like, I don't think they're better than top. I don't think they're better than BLG. I don't know about like FPX. I probably put them like a little bit lower. But I think they could be competitive with JDG as well, potentially. There's a lot to like about this roster, and they just continue to crush a region. And the funny thing is, like, even when they're happy gaming at times, like they do get a little bit throwy, right? They do get a little bit throwy, but then you can see them just instantly tighten up, like they did in the Carmine Corp game. And even with big deficits, like they're down 4 or 5K gold, and they're still winning the game in 30 minutes because they can see the win condition, tighten up, make the macro play, get a beautiful engage, and just stomp the enemy team into a team fight, straight into a Baron, and they just win. So
this is how you know the rest of the LEC's weak, because like you're saying, it's like that fucking meme of the guy playing the console game, Monty. Where you like sat like that, leaning back, but then when you focus, like, and you lean forwards to focus and win the game. G2 just does that. It's like when they're actually forced to and people can finally almost beat them, then they're like, right, we better try now. And then they win anyway. They just win anyway. And the other thing is, the other reason this lineup is mega is I think they've got everything, mate. They've got like basically almost a dream team of players. I mean, the joke is the guy is just one of the best junglers now. Like, they're all amazing. They've got a dream team of players. They've got probably the best coach and the best drafting coach at that. Then they've got all that other support staff of people like the Remain guy and the sports psychology guy. They've just got everything, boys. Like, the problem is any other team only has one factor. Like, maybe BDS has the coaching and a couple of players. Maybe Fnatic has some star players, but then doesn't have the coherent. You know what I mean? Like, everyone else has like fatal flaws. If this was like top trumps, they just have like a 9 or a 10 on everything, it feels like. So they're mad OP at the moment. And all the super teams just haven't made it, have they? So there's no real competition right now. Like, the real saddest thing of all right now is this. Dude, I swear, I don't actually even think this Fnatic lineup is that good, Monty. But half of what they're surviving off is that we all have to have insane copium that they're decent, because they're one of the only teams that like looks like they could beat G2 in a game. Like, at least, if Humanoid has a pop-off, he can do something. Razork can out-jungle potentially. But like, that's the hope. And even they're not that good against the other teams. They're not smurfing on everyone. So like, right now, the LEC is just G2's world, isn't it? It's just G2's world and we live in it, mate. It's just G2's world.
It just doesn't feel like anybody is like, they feel bored in some of these games. Like, that's why the happy gaming happens. But as soon as they need to turn it on and just win the game, they do it almost instantly. And the gold gap or the, whatever other gaps in the game, objective gaps, don't seem to matter anymore. And they just win. So it's an extremely good team. And I'm excited to see them for the rest of the split. I'm excited to see them inevitably when they end up at MSI. I'm excited to see them at the Esports World Cup, which of course they will be attending.
You know what's sad? This is one of those things that's a fake complaint, but I'll say it anyway for the purpose of entertainment. Is I actually do feel like it's unfair what's going on in LEC, Monty. It's just unfair. Because logically, if you're French, you just tune into that, like, whatever, like fucking O Gaming broadcast. You watch all the biased ass French people like, oh la la, everyone French is fucking amazing. I don't love the Spanish guys. I say idiot, putain. And then you tune into the fucking esports maniacals, like, Spanish one with Ibai and all that shit. And then they're just like, oh la la. Well, I don't even know. Dios, Dios, oh my God, it's un popo. Thorin es un popo. Just doing that all the time, right? They get to have their stream. Here's what I want. I'm being serious, but I'm not. Right, which is from now on, no more LEC broadcast. LEC broadcast is the English language broadcast. So from now on, LEC broadcast has to be fuck Spain and fuck France, fuck Germany, fuck the North. It's just Anglos only. That's what you need to turn the LEC broadcast into, Anglos only. I need my hate broadcast. Where's my broadcast so that I can nationally hate on everyone else in the league? Isn't that what LEC is now? Hating on everyone? Why don't I get to hate? Why do I have to just tune in and hear Vedius make a not that funny joke and then go Borg ruin it with bad analysis? Why do I have to tune in and see that?
Yeah, but here's the thing, Thorin. Now,
and then go, wait a minute, is that Frankie? How annoying. Oh, it's just someone not quite as good as Frankie, but equally as annoying. Right, anyway, I've got, that's all the bingo card. That's all the bingo card. Keep going.
Well, why is it that the one English language co-stream that's allowed is Cadrill's co-stream, where he has to be nice to everybody in English, whereas like Kameto and Ibai can just say whatever the fuck they want and just be massive homers and just have their entire like sidekick crew of other homers for their nationality. But Cajal, he's the one who has to be reasonable, guys. He can't possibly say anything that would piss off the other fan bases.
When there was that drama with the Niski and the fucking El Yoya shit, bro, on those, they were like actually like straight up saying the mega inappropriate shit about like people's like families and insulting them all. Like it was wild what they were saying on those core streams. Yeah, it's mental, wasn't it? Whereas you're right, Cajal has to be like, oh, careful guys, I almost made a joke there.
I mean, part of that is who Cajal is, and he just wants to avoid any of that. But I do think it's like, and also that if he said anything, Riot would be up his ass in 2 seconds. Whereas apparently it's just cool because most of the people at Riot don't speak French or Spanish, so there's no way for them to just police the fucking other co-streams.
Well, the joke is that's actually where Dom did fuck up. If he'd just been speaking in Spanish the whole time, he'd be safe. But his mistake was speaking in English. And then anything he says, nail polish or whatever that was. What a fucking whack reason to get core stream taken. When he said that comment about nail polish or whatever. Bloody hell. What a world.
Yeah.
What a world.
So Mad Lions, I think, is going to have, to answer your question, I don't think it's going to be as glorious as their initial debut, which, I mean, we gave them their flowers for that. We said this was an incredibly impressive start to, a mostly new roster. But I think this is where, it comes home to roost, where maybe they're not quite as good. And especially like if Heretics is actually a much better team, because we didn't anticipate Heretics to be as bad as they were either, right?
Oh, no, of course not.
And Vitality has had more of an upside as well. Like BDS still has a lot of strengths to them. I think it is just going to be generally more difficult for Mad Lions Koi to do well this split.
By the way,
if SK doesn't randomly fall off at the end again.
I've got a little gem from my source network. So in case anyone's wondering, what source network have you got, Thorin? Bitch, didn't I tell you about a month ago when I dropped an actual DM between two Sheep Esports people? And obviously the joke there is like, I'm inside their mind, inside the room. What are you talking about? So all you need to know is I've got the connections. This is actually going to blow your mind, Monty. When you hear this, you will know how annoying the game these fucking core streamers are playing is. Are you ready for the ultimate fucking insanely fugazi storyline? Supposedly, the Kameto guy doesn't actually think he did diss Yamato Cannon when he kept saying those drafts were shit. That was, in fact, now this is not even a joke. I've heard that because he didn't just say like Yamato fucked the drafts up, he was just implying something general about the drafts, and that wasn't to put pressure on Yamato and make people think Yamato was to blame. That is, if you believe that, you will believe just anything, guys. Like, that's called having your, like in this scenario, he's like, you bust in the room, there's all just crumbs everywhere. You look, Kamel, what's going on? He's got all like icing all over his face. And then you go, you still got that cake, right? Yeah, I've got the cake. I don't need any more cake. I'm not hungry now, but I've still got the cake as well. I've still got it as well. And I've eaten it. It's like, which is it? Well, you got to do one or the other. Because, mate, that absolutely beggars belief. Guys, if you watch that stream, he was saying the drafts are shit. He's openly implying that Yamato, the coach, did it. Although I will give you a little gem, I will say, which is I actually have heard maybe that it wasn't like Yamato was totally innocent. Like I've heard maybe he actually wasn't enough of a disciplinarian with some of the players in the team. So I've heard there was maybe some fuckery on both ends.
But how can you discipline the players when they're Kameto's friends and he's the one who operates the team and he made the roster and says that he's like undyingly loyal to Seiken for whatever reason? How can you be in a position of power to do discipline if you know that those players are just going to immediately run to Kameto and start crying?
I mean, that may as well be like the boss's son. And then they're like, why didn't you just fire him? It's like, well, it's the boss's son. What are you talking about? That's not even on the table, is it? Okay.
Yeah. So I think that's tough to believe. All right. Any other topics you want to hit tonight before we go into viewer questions?
Not really. Also, by the way, I'll just say this as well. is if you ever do listen to any of those fucking language streams, I can't tell if I'm an idiot. In English, do people actually try to do that much stylistic stuff when they cast? Because whenever you tune into those foreign language core streams, mate, they are ridiculous. Like, the joke about the Spanish one is, mate, there are more fucking rolling R's on there than a fucking pirate ship full of ecstasy. Not bad. Not bad. That was decent. Someone write that down. I want to use that later for something else. Someone write that down. We'll bring that out later for something else. It's all good. But by the way, don't worry. That was classic Thorin shit point into a joke just to get to the joke. I just had to get to the destination. There's nothing there. We're here. It's over. It's over. It's all good. It's all good.
Well, on that note, we are going to take a quick break, guys. And when we come back, we will continue with viewer questions. See you then.
Right, we're back for viewer questions, which is the part where obviously people who support the Last Free Nation network are able to ask questions of us. They don't have to be about esports, but they're fun if they are. If not, as usual, we usually answer a bunch of questions about books and music and movie and culture and all that. But to ask a question, you have to be somebody who supports us, which means you subscribe to our Discord. So go to the Discord, Last Free Nation, check out all the info. Once you subscribe, there's a channel where you can submit the questions. Monty will pass them and pick the best ones.
I usually just start at the beginning and do as many as we can get through, which is usually a lot. So if you had to choose only one type of alcohol to drink for the rest of your life, which would it be? Red wine or whiskey, probably. It would have definitely been whiskey a few years ago, but wine has creeped in there now. What about you?
I mean, I'm not a big alcohol drinker, so it would either be something like I've told people I'm a fan of those like British sweet ciders where they're like pear cider and stuff and strawberry flavor and all that shit. So I like those ones because they're kind of just almost like soda basically, or like the classic ones like amaretto sour. Quite like that.
Yep, there you go.
Can't ever go wrong with that. It's got a pretty good flaw to
it. Okay. Monty question. Do you have any
favorite whiskey be? What's the best whiskey you
can
drink forever?
Boy.
What's the best one?
Where do you even want to go? Are we talking about scotch or rye or bourbon?
What would be the go-to? Because like he says, if it's the only drink you can drink forever, what would be the go-to for you? What would
probably Bowmore?
Consistent one.
Bowmore. So okay. I like a lot of the Isla or Island Scottish single malts because they're smokier and peatier. Bowmore is my favorite distillery, but island malts, like I love Talisker, I love Bowmore, Colilla, Ardbeg, I mean, Lagavulin, Lafroig. I mean, I like. It
sounds like you're making up words now, but okay.
I mean, they're Scottish words.
Stuff.
As for, I generally prefer rye over bourbon, and I'm a pretty big fan of Whistle Pig, which is a Vermont rye distillery, or High West, which is one in Utah. So those are great.
I should have just made up a load of words and just pretended like if you guys didn't know the alcohol, like and Chomlingtons and pig tom tops. Yeah, big fan of the tom tops. The ones that
Rip Van Winkle, you know.
I know
a lot about whiskey. What can I say?
Okay, fair enough.
Monty question. Do you have any advice for rolling up wrist wraps after they come out of the dryer? They are super tangled, creased, and take an eternity to straighten and roll. Yes. So here's what you do. You get a delicates bag or a bag that you would put. So a delicates bag is like what you would put like lingerie or delicates in, or like a bag for wool garments so they don't pill, and you put your hand wraps in there so they don't get all super tangled up with anything else. And actually you can get hand wrap rollers that you can drill into the wall with screws, and they have like a little knob on them, and you attach one end and you just roll it up. So there you go. Hot tips for hand wraps. Thank you. And for Thorin, thank you for post-rock recommendations, Explosions in the Sky and Sigur Rós Slap. True. Question for Thorin. What national teams, except for England, do you root for and against in international football, and why? Do you care about any other international teams?
I'm the same as in esports. I tend to go based on players. So it just depends which players I like, or stylistically. So like I will say historically, I'm a fan of Ronaldo, so Portugal, that was a team somewhat I enjoyed. And I also like stylistically, like the way teams play. So like, for example, the Spain team of the 2000s was unbelievable. The one that basically was everyone except Messi. The joke was from Barcelona and Real Madrid. Even though I actually despise, like, tactically the style of play. I've always admired the way Italy players. They have a very defensive style, but just basically makes it really hard to score. So there's a few ones from just for history that I like. Yeah. Obviously, just stick with England most of the time, though.
I have a question for each of you. Thorin, I got done watching Richard Lewis's ranking of all the CS majors, and Cluj-Napoca sounded absolutely insane behind the scenes. What do you remember about this event?
Oh, well, what he means is basically, like, a lot of these stories have been told, but I'll give you some info. Basically, the problem this event had was it was actually the last major before the majors got, like, way more prize money. It went up to $1 million, $500,000 or whatever it was, and, like, the scale went up. So the problem was it was basically, like, one of the most scoffed ones, because it was where they did stuff like, we're at an event in Romania, and unironically, there was like a day where we just didn't have any water or something mental like that. So we just think about that once. You're just talking all, and this is back, by the way, when there were no breaks. There was no, like, schedule. Like me and Richard, I think, did every game, and so we were just doing games without any water. Like you can imagine how dry your fucking voice is. And the joke there is, by the way, you're trying to drink like Coca-Colas or something because you've got to have something. So there's that. Then there was also similarly a day. I mean, Richard's told this story before where Hellspawn, the guy who later, literally like the next event after this, fucked Richard over with the whole order thing. Famously, the Hellspawn guy, we went up to him. He's this like old school esports guy who's been in Counter-Strike a long time. And this guy just had zero social like awareness or tact, Monty. So even though we're working his event as talent, right? You know how if someone's coming to you and you have a load of like problems to deal with, what you do is you just politely fob everyone off to what you say. Okay, I've heard your concerns. Like, I'll address it and talk to the team and I'll get back to you if I can. Even if you can't do anything, you say that just to sort of like smooth everything over, right? This guy never understood like tact, Monty. So he just said straight up to me and Richard when we were like, where's the food? We're hungry. He just goes, oh, I could have brought the food to you guys, but I decided that food should go to the workers of the event. And so I sent your food away, Thorin. I sent it away to the production team. And then we're just going like, why would you even say that to us though? Like, bro, we're working the whole event. We're starving hungry. And now you're going out of your way to tell us we could have had food, but you gave it to someone else. Like, are you, if you want like a fucking meltdown, this is how you get a meltdown, motherfucker. Like, oh, it was wild. So it was just like that the whole way through. By the way, towards the end, there's another story
Classic
I've told before, but this is a pretty good one. You'll appreciate this one, Monty. At the end of the event, Richard almost had another the joke is this is a month before the loader incident. Richard almost had to fight with a different pro. Because are you ready? Right? Even though the event was won by Envious, like Hastro's team, so the French team with Happy and all those guys, Kenny S, Apex won the event. Right? Kiyashima was on the team that won the event, Monty, and he'd won at this point in time like 2 of the last 4 majors or something. So he was actually a very successful career. But because, sadly, he knew on by the numbers, me and Richard had critiqued him and said we thought they should have Shocks instead of him. Even though this guy's won the major, Monty, instead of, like, I don't know, piss off with your French mates, like your teammates who just won the event. He was just sat where we were in this area where we're just having, like, beers in this fucking, like, bar at the after party in the hotel or whatever, right? We're just having beers, me and Richard. Kiyashima comes and sits down. I'll make the story quick. And basically, because he's already drunk because they've won, he just antagonizes Richard like the whole time in a really obnoxious way and kept saying all stuff like, hey man, hey guy, you think you know about the game, but you don't know anything, and I would shut you down, little man. I would say all mad shit like that to Richard. So because Richard wasn't even vaguely drunk enough yet, at one point Richard just said to him, he just goes, like, because he tried like, putting the olive branch out there, Monty, being like, well, yes, I know, KO, you've won the event, mate. You win this one. It doesn't matter what we say on a talk show, does it? At the end, like, you won the major, so don't worry about it. You just go and enjoy yourself, mate. Because this guy was getting more and more mad. He couldn't sort of have his moment where he like humiliated us because we were like wrong about our opinion. At one point, because he was getting so annoyed, because the guy also, by the way, was doing mega obnoxious stuff. Like when you would reply to him after he'd said something, he would just do stuff like, me no speaky to England, oh, what you say, I no understand what, like, as you're like trying to talk like as a normal person. So at one point, Richard just pulled out his phone and he pulled up that like timer app and he just put 1 minute and he just goes, I'm going to set my app for 1 minute. And if after 1 minute you're still here, there's going to be problems. And he goes like, and so the best part is Keo then was like thinking he was in like some fucking like Armageddon the movie where he's going to run the clock all the way down. So as it's running down, he's going like, what do you mean, mate? Me no speaking to England. And Richard's just going 20 seconds. 10 seconds. And I'm sat there, by the way, remember the other things happened here. I'm sat there watching all of this, just going, fuck, what happens if it hits 0? What actually happens if it... And thankfully, Keo left on about 5 seconds, like an Armageddon. So it's all good. He left, nothing happened. It was all good. But that was mental. Because I remember just thinking, why are we just being, like, verbally abused by the winner of the major? And like, and we're just like, please leave. Like, this isn't even good for anyone. So that's a pretty good one. Yeah, that event was a shit show all in all. Just an absolute shit show.
Monty, we need to know, if you were a brick in a wall, which brick would you be? Oh, it says, thanks, Riot. That was like a Riot interview question. I mean, that is like the dumbest fucking interview question. I'm not even going to dignify that.
It's also perfect if you think about it though, Monty, because it does actually sound like inadvertently they don't know that the most famous terminology of brick in the wall is Pink Floyd talking about not just being like a pleb within society. So the irony of that in there, the joke is that is the question they ask when you join Riot. Like, what brick in the wall would you like to be? How would you like to lose your autonomy and personal identity within our Riot? Mega brand. Like, I know it's still on the nose, isn't it? It's still on the nose.
I would rather be the guy in the cask of Amontillado being bricked up behind the wall than join your shitty brick in the wall system. That's what I would rather be. In Dom's latest co-stream YouTube video on Fly vs 100 Thieves, he was asked by someone in Twitch chat if the LCS players are playing from prison. Dom responded, Riot said that until NA makes another semifinal at Worlds, we're not getting out of prison. Please assemble a team of 5 current LCS players who you think possess the skills to break out of prison, i.e. make a semifinal at Worlds.
Okay.
Also, please introduce them in a manner similar to the way John Cusack's character in Con Air introduced the inmates to be transported. That was hilarious, where it's like, and here's the psychopath. This guy's so crazy. True. He killed all these people.
Yeah. It was good.
I mean, frankly, Thorin, we thought that this Cloud9 roster outside of Fudge might actually be able to do some, decent damage. Jojo Pian, he's already proved himself on the international stage, but he's still a young guy. He's out here to take some scalps for North America with his laning prowess, right? Berserker, he's a traitor turned against the Korean region, now representing the flag of North America, coming for Gumayushi, whose spot he once coveted. Right? There's one for you. But like, how could Blabber, Jojo, Berserker, Vulcan, and maybe Impact in the top lane, how could that not be the best possible NA roster that you could assemble? Like maybe you could argue Inspired instead of Jojo or instead of Blabber, maybe.
I think the joke is, I think you could make 2 rosters. Yeah, if you just pick the best players about a bunch of these rosters, you could make a couple of lineups, mate. There's some talent in NA.
But I don't think it's ridiculous to say that Cloud9 with a different top laner and overcoming whatever weird ass problems they're saying on paper, that Cloud9 roster, when this Cloud9 roster was formed, we were saying this should be a team that could make top 8 at Worlds. So if you make it even slightly better, then maybe it's a team that with a good matchup could make top 4.
By the way, being as we're allowed to change players, can't I just take Team Liquid and put, like, I don't know, fucking Jensen and FBI on it or something? You know what I mean? Can't just make Team Liquid better if I'm doing that. Like, a good decent lineup there too. There's a couple of Inspired's pretty banging too. I'm with you. Yeah, there's some fucking good players in the LCS, mate.
I mean, Whitbo has been in a Worlds Finals. Never forget.
Not for long, but he was in one. He was indeed in one.
So yeah, I think there's ways you could do it. There's my Con Air introduction for you for a couple of the players. After the travesty that was the LEC team of the split, could you build a team that could contest G2 from current players and recent free agents?
In LEC? Oh, easily. I think LEC, by the way, has done one of the worst jobs ever of consolidating talent. It's like it's all spread out across the league, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's half the problem.
Yeah, I mean, I think Razork and Humanoid have been very good. This split. I mean, maybe you feel like you could trade out Humanoid for somebody else.
Dude, I could make a lineup right now that has a chance. Like, let me think. Okay, so I'm going to go like irrelevant top lane, Razork jungle. Who am I going for mid lane though? Mid lane's a bit trickier because I'm not as big a Humanoid fan. So
you could take a VTO maybe.
VTO's not bad. And then for bot lane, there's a low bunch of angles we can go. We can go Kazi. I think he's pretty fucking good. For support, but we've got Alvaro There's one right there, fucking Labrov. Dude, you could make it. This is what I mean. You could make a pretty good lineup that could be as good as G2, I think.
Yeah, they're just all spread out amongst all these different teams. Yes. And like, you know, if El Yoya had moved on to a team with a bunch of veterans instead of doing his weird ass Spanish lineup, you know, it'd be a very different league potentially, right?
Yes.
You know, if Bo and Upset had gone onto a better team than Karmine Corp, again, it could be very different. Have either of you read Aristotle's Poetics? And if so, do you agree with his critique of Plato? In Book 10 of the Republic, Plato argues that poets are not useful as they further us from understanding the thing itself. They further us from exiting the cave, further us from the purest forms of an ideal which rests in the forms, while for Aristotle, poets are not supposed to show us the objective form of ideas, but rather show what the world could be, show us an artistic expression. I mean, they show you a different aspect of things too, right? Plato moves towards the existence of an objective, correct way of viewing the world, while Aristotle views things teleologically, judging poets for their ability to create. Yeah, I mean, I would definitely be on Aristotle's side of these things. Like the misnomer is that what Plato is dealing with is that he believes that there even is an objective reality, which there is, but you can't perceive it. So everything is always colored by your. It's colored by your limited sensory inputs and your ability to understand the world. And we've evolved in order to perceive only those things that are necessary for us to live on this world, an evolutionary system. So if anything, art and poetry helps us reconceive, the notions and actually move beyond, our sense perception, which is, that's a core piece of, for example, William Blake's poetry. And we're not even talking about the rest of art. So I think Plato may not have aged great in that regard.
No, the main problem is, first of all, I will say I haven't read Aristotle. And unfortunately, historically, I was traditionally quite biased. Like I would have thought Plato was my guy before. So I also just haven't looked into Aristotle enough. But I'm actually interested now to go back, because I have to say a lot of like Platonic shit, even though it's like it's so enmeshed in all of Western thinking that you take it for granted. Some of it I do wonder about, actually. Because actually, one thing, for example, Monty, I'll give you a great example. There's a modern day sort of a midwit thinking that goes like this. Well, why would you ever need a painting? You have a camera now. It's like, that's exactly the point. You think that paintings are supposed to be, like you're saying, objective representations of things that exist in the world, using colors to represent to your eyes. No, to me, the whole point of a painting is that your experience of that thing comes through the painting, right? It's even a lot of the stylistic choices to represent emotion or feeling or sense aspects or things about consciousness or how we perceive things. You can even say a lot of modern art's perception. It's based around like the idea. That's why, if you don't know, half of the reason why they look like bollocks, the modern art things, is because they're sort of a reference to an idea that someone else knows that was building on another idea. And unless you sort of can go down the stack of turtles to the bottom idea, you won't know what they're referencing, so you won't know why it's supposed to be clever. So I would just say, no, that's not my style at all. I don't really get the Platonic side of that, mate.
Yeah. Our favorite friend, Butt Powder 420, asks, would you rather have one $10,000 hooker or 10,000 $1 hookers? Obviously the $10,000 hooker, guys. I don't want 10,000 $1 hookers. That sounds horrible. I'm not interested in 10,000 cheap hooker experience. I'm not interested in any hooker experiences, let's be clear, but I'm especially not interested in that one. I would much rather take the one time.
The problem is he made it like a joke. To make it actually interesting, what you need to do is this.
10 $1,000 hookers.
Yeah, exactly. Because then it's more like, do I want the experience more, or do I want to see, is the like 10K one really like some mind-blowing, god tier like level shit? So yeah, who knows? The joke being, though, I will actually hurt everyone's feelings now. Basically, one of those options just is whoever your favorite Instagram influencer is, if she goes to Dubai/Hong Kong a lot. So just putting that out there. It's already available. You just don't know it. You just don't have the hookup guys.
10,000 might be a little cheap for that one, though.
Maybe 20K, true. Maybe 20.
Monty, do you and Doa plan to watch the 3 Body Problem adaptation by Benioff and Weiss for Nerd Legion? Of course we do. We actually we actually mapped out. I will just tell you up front. We actually mapped out like the next 2 months of Nerd Legion today, which is Dune 2 is coming this week, guys. We're doing Shogun next week, Three Body Problem, Constellation, Ninja Kamui, Rebel Moon 2, and then Fallout. So there you go. There's like your next, 7 episodes of Nerd Legion. Enjoy. So it'll be very, soon after all of these things come out. Or finish coming out, I should say. So with all the crazy support picks that Carrie has been bringing out, when do we start to have the conversation that Carrie is the new baby faker / faker junior? After all, he has got casters and viewers reacting to his picks the same way Faker used to, Master Yi Olaf, etc. And with him being on T1, I feel the similarities are definitely there for a true comparison. I think the problem is that Carrier just plays a less impactful role than Faker. So, even though Carrier is incredibly dominant within his position and has, in fact, he was one of the main reasons why they did so well in certain metas, like the one we saw at the end of Worlds. He's on a trajectory where he could be the greatest support player of all time. Let's be clear.
Of course. Yeah.
Is he on a trajectory where he's going to be the greatest player of all time? No, but that is like, I don't know. I think it's just a factor of his role.
Let's be real. Exactly. Come on.
But
remember, he has already had a couple of years now, like a really high-level player. So what I'll say is this. I do think the problem League has as a game is people forget that in the early years, all we had was 2 or 3 years. So it does mean, I will say, Monty, people like Madlife are slightly overvalued because, it feels like they did it forever. But you have to remember, it was just 2 or 3 years. If you've had, a really long career now, the point is, Kerry is at the point of Madlife's whole career at this point in time. Soon he'll have more years at the top. So yeah, I do think the modern day people sometimes do get we're a bit slow to put them in that category of the greatest of all time. Kerry is already there. He's a contender for it for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. He's really good. Of course, architect of Korean esports based Joe Marsh, VCT perfectly captures the mid-February to August window left open by the NFL. How genius of Riot to do that. And how does no one point it out? Is Riot just this much above anyone else in esport? The joke about that is that all of the Riot executives are such big NFL fans that they just don't want it interfering with the NFL season. So they just don't deal with it during that time period. Because God forbid, you'll notice, guys, this is very tricky of Riot. So what they did was they moved LCS off weekends, right? And then started VCT after the NFL season is over. Therefore, they never get the NFL season interrupted in January. And especially NFL playoffs interrupted by LCS. Now it's back on weekends, but you understand, on Sundays in particular. No, the VCT schedule is trash. The fact that they run such a limited competition is ridiculous. Even if they do a good job of having more international events, these teams that play two best of threes and every 6 months is just absurd. Throughout the years, Giant X/XL had various rosters, yet Patrick has been the one constant. Do either of you think he should have been replaced at any point? I don't know of any point. He's been a pretty solid performing player in the last year or two.
Our problem with him's always been the same thing, Monty. Is he's clearly a good player, but the problem is there's certain people who always tried to hype him he was essentially, they always made him sound like what I thought Upset is, which is actually the next best, top ADC who's going to take over. For me, Patrick was always probably 3rd or 4th best in the league, but he's quite consistently been around that level. So I can see why he never gets cut. He's probably the only person who on average does their job every year, right? So I can see why he stayed. It's just for me, maybe he's not quite as, maybe the top end's over exaggerated, but I do think he's a good player.
Mm-hmm. What was your favorite non-esports job you've ever had? I don't know. I've liked most of the jobs that I've had. I've cooked in a Thai restaurant, done cocktail bartending, worked at a law firm when I was done with college. Those are probably my favorite ones that I've had. So, cooking and working in restaurants or bars and then working at the law firm.
Easy. I used to be a paper boy. And then what I did was I timed it so that I finished being a paper boy right after Christmas when you get all the Christmas tips. Then I just bought myself an N64, then fucked off. And the best thing was over Christmas, some people even gave me oh, good job. Do a good job next year. Yeah, thanks. And in goes my notice. And N64. So, there you go. Just because of the N64, basically, guys. That's all I care about. So.
What was your favorite movie of 2023?
I'll have to
know.
look what even came out in 2023.
Yeah, I don't know what
My
came
problem
out
is
in
I'm not that good at
2023.
watching new shit. Yeah, that's a problem.
Let me look at the list.
Oppenheimer, I'm guessing. Could be Oppenheimer.
Oppenheimer is great. I was a big fan of Oppenheimer.
It's got to be up there. Feels like the obvious one to me at the moment.
Yeah, I'm
I don't
looking.
think I've seen that many more.
Yeah, I'm looking across some of the movies. I saw Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I thought that one was all right. I saw John Wick Chapter 4. I enjoyed John Wick, so that was fine. I haven't seen Killers of the Flower Moon yet. I actually don't like Scorsese very much, so I kind of avoid those films, especially like new Scorsese.
I really haven't seen that many of these. Like I saw the fucking Napoleon, but that was just all right. It wasn't bad.
Yeah, it was fine. Right. I heard The Holdovers was good, but I haven't seen that yet.
It was good. Basically, you'll like that. If you like Christmas movies that are like feel good, you'll like that one.
Yeah, I've heard The Holdovers is good.
Paul Giamatti fan, he's just good, isn't he?
Yeah, I will see Poor Things because I like Yorgos Lanthimos a lot. So I'm excited to see that one, but I haven't seen it yet. I heard Godzilla.
Technically, you saw this Poirot one, The Haunting in Venice. That wasn't bad, actually.
I haven't seen that one yet, but I've seen the other two Poirot ones, and I enjoyed those. But those were not.
They're actually surprisingly good. You have to realize in Britain we're all made biased because that David Suchet guy who played it in the TV series was so good.
Yeah, he was.
But I have to say, Kenneth Branagh's doing a different take. It's not bad actually.
Kenneth Branagh's really good.
And by the way, the way those films are shot is actually pretty good. Like they go fucking full on with all the like camera shit. Like it's actually pretty visually stunning. Yeah.
Thorin, if you like those, and I recommended this to you previously, the same guy who made those made Blue Eye Samurai, that animated show that's fucking really good on Netflix, and Kenneth Branagh is also a voice actor in that. That show is fucking good. So if you like those films, same dude who made Blue Eye Samurai. In your opinion, do you think Doublelift tanked on purpose to get out of TL to go join his girlfriend at TSM? It's not an unreasonable statement. If so, why do you think Steve and Peter maintain such a good relationship afterwards? Because Steve is a very amiable guy for the most part. You know, here's the thing about both Steve and Jack. They are very conflict avoidant people. Now, Reginald is not. But both Steve and Jack really do not like being on bad terms with people, and they're pretty passive. So if I had to guess, it's because, you know, Steve isn't going to go ape shit at Peter, and he's pretty chill. Like, Steve is pretty chill.
Think about this, mate. You remember this. Think how many years Team Liquid languished, never able to get to the status of the TSMs, the CLGs, the Cloud9s. Bro, Doublelift brought this guy 4 titles and an MSI final. Like, he's pretty happy with Doublelift's contribution to the Team Liquid org. Yeah, he might not like that split where he's fucking around, but aside from that, I'm sure he has very positive feelings towards Doublelift. He basically turned the whole fucking TL org around, didn't he?
Yep, that's a good point. I think some teams could do something like a weekly review of other teams' games for content, maybe their opponents, and release it a week in arrears. I don't know. It'd be something they probably already do, and you get a chance for fans to be more invested in a team than plug your own merch at the end. Yeah, I mean, especially with teams with a lot of good personalities, like having them. Also, the shit talking would be hilarious, right? Of
course.
It's a great opportunity to build up drama within the league. Yeah, absolutely, it's a good idea. How many monitors?
Also, one thing I'm always interested by personally is when you find out that a player actually does have like an analytical mind. I'll give you an example recently, Monty. When they did one of those LEC things where it's like, when like Shakara's just asks players questions and they do those little things. They did that one where it was like design your perfect bot lane. And mate, the Alvaro guy, it's no wonder he's so cracked. Bro, it's clear he actually watches for real, like LPL and LCK really close. He knew like everything. He knew like who was better at like laning, the team fight. Like he wasn't the guy who just went ruler for everything. Like, when people just say that, like he understood that like Viper has this, maybe mechanics, and this guy champion, like maybe like Elk is champion pool, so whatever, like you're gonna pick, he actually was really on point. Like he clearly followed the game. It was cool to find out actually. He wasn't just a guy saying like faker, for everything.
How many monitors do you use, and do you have any preferred brand? I use 2 currently, but I would like to have 3. And then I also want to, so Elgato released this prompter that can go over your camera that actually functions as an additional monitor that I'd like to start using for my shows, so I can put the video call onto the camera, basically.
Yeah.
So I'm just always looking into the camera instead of off to the side at my second monitor. And also because a lot of the times when we're streaming these, we're capturing a monitor, so I can just capture the prompter instead. So that actually new piece of tech from Elgato I have it. I had to send it to the States, and I'm going to get it into Korea shortly, so I'll be using that. But I think 3 monitors is generally so for our content, and the way our content works, guys, is that oftentimes we have to, or at least the way I do it is when I'm producing, like I produce SI. I have a full screen. I have the Discord call or the video call on a full screen monitor. And then I capture that monitor for you guys, and that's what you're seeing. So I can still use my other monitor for things, but especially now that I'm streaming a lot, it's helpful to have 3 monitors, I think, so that you have, more chat open and stuff like that. The other thing that's cool about that prompter, Thorin, is you can put Twitch chat onto the prompter as well. So when you're reading Twitch chat, you're just looking right into the camera. So maybe that'll solve my problem. How many monitors do you use?
I just use 2. I mean, I have it all set up, and all you need to know is this. I just use the BenQ monitors because in Counter-Strike, it's the famous one that everyone used to buy for the game. So I just got the one that all the pros were using at the time.
Yeah. I usually use some kind of, right now in Korea, I'm using an LG G-Sync monitor, low latency G-Sync, which I've been pretty much enjoying. Because when I brought my old Asus ROG monitor to Korea this time, it got smashed in transit, so I had to get a new one. But maybe I'd use some of the new Samsung monitors if I wanted to spend more money. But I'll use whatever monitor brand wants to sponsor LFN. What are 3 films that together would most accurately describe your taste in cinema?
Ooh. That's tough. I mean, look, to be fair, actually, my favorite films pretty much fit that already. So people will know 2 of my favorite films are The Prestige and Heat. So I think right there I could give you that. So Prestige, if people don't know, one of the reasons I'm a big fan of Alan Moore is I love things that are very well scripted. Like they fit together really beautifully, and like there's a logic, but at the same time, it's not like, here's the difference. Something like Tenet goes too far with that. Obviously, that's like too hard to keep track of it. I also like to be intuitive that you can keep track of it. And then the reason I'd say Heat is because I also do like films that are like, it doesn't have to be super inventive all the time, but I just like people who execute very well. So fabulous actors that know what their style is, know what they're. So that's a perfect one. Because if you don't know, De Niro and Pacino are probably perfectly cast in that film, like what they're absolutely the best at. And that's why the film kills it. So there's a couple of good ones for you. If I had to pick a third one, I'd probably just pick something really creative, like, I don't know, Terry Gilliam film or something. Because I also do like films with very imaginative sort of like sets and set designs and ambition and stuff. So I don't know, fucking Time Bandits or something. There you go.
Time Bandits is a banger, man. I love that movie.
You've never seen that, by the way, guys. There's one. Don't look up anything. Just look up Time Bandits and watch it and buckle in, because you are not even ready for the experience you're going to have. It goes everywhere.
That's great.
It's a banger, isn't it?
Yeah, Time Bandits is a really good shout out. That might actually be on one of mine as well. Without overlapping, I think for me, it would have to be probably The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I'm trying to describe my taste. Master and Commander, probably.
The Russell Crowe one? That was a banger.
The Russell Crowe one. Because I'm trying to describe, what I'm trying to do here is like not necessarily, like these are among my favorite films, obviously, but kind of like, classic Western cinema, then a historical period piece, because I love period dramas and period films. And that probably is like one of my favorite periods of period films is like Napoleonic, like British Navy shit from the Napoleonic Wars is like really my jam. So, I love the Hornblower, the fucking like, Jack Aubrey, like love all that shit. So the Master and Commander film,
all that stuff. Sharp. What about, surely like a film noir would be your third, wouldn't it?
Ooh, that's a good one. But I maybe it's too similar to some of the other ones. Maybe I'll do something wild and like pick Hereditary or something more modern, because I'm a big fan of Ari Aster's stuff, and like I think Hereditary is actually just an insane banger, like occult, psychological horror. So like not jump scares, but kind of deeply scary situations. Like Hereditary, I think is really excellent with really good acting. Definitely one of the scariest movies I've ever seen. So maybe that's a more recent one to show kind of a more recent film. But yeah, there's a bunch of film noir, like Double Indemnity would be one for me for sure. Vertigo. LA Confidential.
I was actually thinking the other day, so I'll use this reference here, Monty. In some ways, my experience of being in esports, here's the one film you need to watch and you'll understand entirely. It's like the film Rear Window from 1954 by Alfred Hitchcock. It's like I'm sitting watching the whole thing going, no, guys, there's a guy coming up the stairs to murder you all now. And then you're going, well, I don't see anyone there. I don't see him coming. And then I'm going, he's murdering someone else now. Get him there. And then and then no one's even believing me the whole time. Like, guys, and they're like, I can't get a break. Basically, in this analogy, I guess metaphorically, Danny's that little dog that he kills, that little terrier. What the fuck? Jeez. Surely this, of all things, would make you all come to life, guys, and fucking get this guy, but no, apparently not. That's what it feels like to be in esports.
Kurosawa's Yojimbo would be another one too that really describes my taste in cinema. Like a Kurosawa film, I just love Yojimbo. I mean, that was more than 3, but there you go. Back in the offseason, I asked if MonteCristo and Thorin would make an ultimate format video so that I would have a video to show my friends when they try to argue for Swiss format best of one. I am here once again asking for your support in making this content. Thank you for your time. We should actually do that. I think we should just make, an episode of off-season SI just like, okay, this is the format primer. This is why it sucks. Or this is why it's good. What I've learned is
this, Monty. I agree. We should actually do it. But what you have to do is this, in my opinion. I've actually found the problem all those topics have is if you talk about them abstractly, people get really lost. What you got to do is show them like real tournaments that ran in the format. So then you can show that. Like, it's why, if you notice, I waited until after Worlds to do the video showing why I thought Swiss system was bad. Because I wanted to actually show people, look, that you could have had these opponents as your next opponent, but you got unlucky, so you got like the best team in the world, and then this other guy got like Gigabyte Marines or something, when you can actually show like essentially a real tournament being run. I think people intuitively get the problems and what's good. So if we do something like that, we'll pull up like some classic tournaments and show you what's good and bad. I think that would be a good video, actually.
It's like how NRG could get into the quarterfinals without beating Asian teams, and G2 beats Weibo and D plus and loses to NRG, and then they just lose. Very, very fun format. Looks like Thorin has finally given up on perks. Is he ever going to give up on upset? Upset was actually one of the better parts of that team, to be fair.
What's even wrong? I know. Why am I supposed to hate upset now? Like,
Bo and upset have been the better parts of Carmine.
One thing I'm really bored of is the notion that if the team does badly, I have to say all the players are bad. That's not even how it works. Like, spoiler, we mentioned him in this episode. Like, I don't know what the fuck Viper's done wrong for the last 2 years, mate. He just loads into the game and just plays like 10 out of 10 League of Legends. He just can't win because he's one player and he plays it, say, fucking AD. Like, it doesn't matter that you're not in the best team. So why would I give up on upset? He's still a good player. Like, the joke is, he's still one of the only parts of Carmine Corp that looks like it can do anything. He gets a couple of kills at the beginning of every game, and you go, maybe there's a chance. And then the rest of the team just blows it, don't they? So
yeah, Perks was, in fact, the worst part of Heretics. Right. Like, it's not even really debatable.
And like I say, at least I picked his actual bad split to jump off. You all jumped off when he was still winning the LCS, for fuck's sake. And going to, like, playoffs or Worlds.
In one of literature's famous rivalries, William Faulkner claimed Hemingway had no courage and never used a word that might cause the reader to check the dictionary, with Hemingway responding, does he think big emotions come from big words?
That's a banger retort, by the way.
That is a banger retort.
Yes, that's good.
Hemingway is so close. I love Hemingway. Actually, I like Faulkner too, but I like Hemingway more. Is there a similar stylistic rivalry in esports where at the top level a player's baroque style clashes with another player's direct and straightforward way of playing? Isn't that just like LCK versus LPL in a nutshell sometimes, guys?
Yes.
The classic, very direct, blunt Chinese style. Going up against
here's the joke for you, Monty.
Here's the analogy. Vision control of LCK.
Because you'll be able to appreciate this. The contrast between the LPL and the LCK is the original Tony Scott Top Gun. And it is the difference between Iceman, who is the LCK, always does everything correctly, plays by the rules, stays within the lines, just executes, emotionless. And obviously the LPL is Maverick, that fiery passion of riding up to the absolute limit, inverted, taking all the chances. You might flame out and die, but you also might win. That's the contrast right there. And yeah, they are dangerous. Exactly. One of my favorite scenes of all time.
Iceman is the real hero of that movie. Fucking Maverick gets goose killed by being a douchebag. So,
dude, at one point,
Iceman was right.
This is how fucked that movie is, because obviously it tries for most of the movie to push like raw American individualism. Remember, the whole theme of the movie is how he actually, in the end, successfully helps his side win is by not being a maverick and just staying with his wingman. That's all. All he had to do the whole time was just be a team player, literally. The whole time.
What's each of yours favorite war movie and why?
Ooh, that's a good question, because there's a lot I could go with on this one.
There's a lot of good ones, right?
I could go. Like one off the top of my head immediately, Thin Red Line, the fucking Terrence Malick one. That's.
I already said film. Master and Commander, so like.
That's a good one too. That counts. That counts. So,
no, it does. It actually has some. By the way, it has incredibly realistic combat sequences for the time. Like, if you look at how historians view Master and Commander, they think that those ship-to-ship battles are almost perfectly accurate of how ship combat would have been during that period.
I was also a big fan of the classic Kubrick one, Paths of Glory. I think that's a banger.
I mean, Saving Private Ryan is another, great war film. If you actually want to see that, I mean, the thing is, like, are we talking like modern war films? There's like so many fucking different eras of war. I mean, I would say, like, think about probably half of all movies are probably war films in some way.
Of course.
Like, any period film is almost certainly a war film by default, unless it's like fucking like Jane Austen. I don't know. What other war films? Ron? I mean, all of Kurosawa's films are war films.
Like, what's that film I'm looking up now? I mean, the classic one people often reference is that one from 1985, the one called Come and See, that fucking mega dark one about like a fucking like boy who joins like the Soviets, like swap sides in World War II, whatever. It's like a really harrowing film. It's a classic one if people know that one from the 80s. There's loads, like you say, though. Let's face it, the joke of like modern culture, this is why actually I think culture has actually stagnated, is the last 80 years were about hammering the message like World War II was everything wrong in the world. But the problem is that's so far back now that it's sort of skewed culture that you're still on the same thing of like, and the joke in modern culture, Monty, is the bad guys are still the Nazis. What, still? Even when it's like totally different people, and the joke is that original.
It was 80 years ago now.
Anymore. Yeah, I mean, the biggest joke of all is, it's like, this is how far like you've played out these narratives, is in the modern day, the person who's like an evil racist right wing, like is like himself like a second generation like immigrant person from another country who doesn't even fit the demographic, and they're just LARPing these old narratives still, aren't they? So that's why it's so silly. To this day, they still do World War II movies, guys. By the way, there's an obvious one we could throw in there. It's not actually a movie, it's a TV, Band of Brothers.
Oh, Band of Brothers is amazing. I just didn't say that because I didn't say it was because it's not a movie. It's kind of like a long movie. It's a mini series, but Band of Brothers is fucking crazy good.
You got to watch that. Yeah, you got to watch that. Got to watch that.
Seeing that Western teams are pre-recording their draft and then are able to discuss it, do you think this is making a difference? For example, would 100 Thieves have done better or worse if they had to go straight into game instead of having to take time to think about Shaco?
I have a question for you.
Yeah,
I have a question I actually want to ask you, Monty, because I can't remember if it was like Rich's Wrath or someone who said it on Twitter, but I thought it was an interesting point. Isn't the downside to doing this, Monty, that when we get to Worlds, this format won't exist? So you've just practiced like a format that you don't use when you get to Worlds. So, isn't that an issue for you?
So for playoffs, they're not doing the pre-recorded drafts. So at least for the actual playoff games and series, they will be doing the standard live drafts directly into games. But that's the whole thing, is like when we talk about, the famous example that's been given because the players have talked about it is when Jensen had to play into Insanity's mid lane Zac earlier this split. What they were able to do is after the draft was recorded, go into and play one-on-ones or like, I guess Humanoid was tweeting like, time to look at how Chovy plays this matchup, because he had like 15 minutes. He just like tweets that after the draft and then like goes and like watches Chovy VODs for 15 minutes.
I can't lie though.
Yeah. So I mean, it was pretty funny. But I think a lot of that, sure. Like the question is, and I know Cadril has come out as being very against this, but honestly,
maybe
guys,
it was who said it then, but I thought it was an interesting point.
Yeah. Cadril has talked about this, and I'm not sure that the downside is necessarily that bad, that it's not worth saving the immense amount of time, because you have to remember on broadcast, you always lose viewers when you don't have gameplay on. So you want to condense that time.
Yes.
You know, the goal of every broadcaster, I can just tell you this from behind the scenes, is like, how do we lose the fewest number of viewers? Because you are guaranteed to lose viewers during this break. So by shortening that time period, it is in fact the best way to keep viewership. So if we're the question is the difference, the slight difference in the format and the change in players' ability to prep for those games, significant enough difference to not justify losing a bunch of viewers by having a shorter game day? And to me, the efficiency of the broadcast is worth that price. That's my opinion. Especially if they continue to do playoffs with the normal format, because those are the playoffs that are going to show us the teams that go to the international tournaments. Is it ideal? No, guys, it's not. But I would say that having more efficient broadcast with less downtime is more important than this perfect 1-to-1, because I don't think it's that different, and we still get the playoffs with that are the things that determine which teams go to play at these international events where they will not have that method of doing things. What do you think?
I don't know, because the one problem I have is part of me feels intuitively it's better to have it all the same at all times. But I know what you mean. Like the compromise probably is worth it for the broadcast. I mean, at the end of the day, what we're facing now, the problem, Monty, is the same problem we've had in Counter-Strike for a long time. There's a lot of things about Counter-Strike I would like to change about the format, but if I know things about the industry, like adding one extra day to a stadium event costs loads of money, then I know it's not plausible. So again, you have to ask yourself basically what circumstances are we working with here? Like, if this really does improve viewership, well, viewership right now has to be the number one metric for League of Legends. Like, otherwise the game's going to die, isn't it? If we don't have the viewership, no one will care about LEC. There won't be any investment. So if it helps the viewership, probably should do it. Probably have to do a bit of WWE.
Yeah. So I don't think it's that bad. I think it's kind of being overstated right now. What do you think of Destiny's career arc? Do you have any interesting / funny anecdotes from when he was a wee young lad streamer before he made his move into politics? I mean, we both knew this guy before he is what he is now, when he was involved in the esports scene. You know, he was involved kind of in the early days of League of Legends and StarCraft 2. You were debating
He even
with
used
him.
to play League on stream, if people don't know. He used to play League on stream, I believe, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you have like debated him on shows on several occasions in the past, including, what was the last one that you did with him? It was,
I did once went on a stream one time, basically. It was the last time I'll ever do that, but yeah, I once tried to just go on a stream because he claimed, I just thought, fuck it. Here's the thing, I walk in the lion's den. I don't give a fuck, boys. And spoiler, go watch that video. It held up very well, because the stupid thing is, because he'd been so rude to me, he actually had to be somewhat vaguely polite. So it was like we're actually able to have a conversation. But sadly, my problem with him is I just despise people who have bad faith arguing, and his entire style is by definition bad faith arguing to win optically, which is the opposite of what I want in a convo, unfortunately. So for me, it's just not my shit. It's not my style, man.
The thing is that he resorts to like really bizarre discrediting tactics on people. So like one time, you know, I was like getting into a fight with him on Twitter over something, and he always like does this intentionally because he loves the drama. I mean, you see him doing that now with all his bullshit. And the thing about it is that he started basically implying like that I was just some esports streamer and couldn't have a philosophical discussion with him, even though let me just check my notes. He went to a university in Nebraska to study blowing into a metal tube. I think he's like a trumpet or a trombone player.
Maybe just did music or something, yeah.
Yeah. But I went to one of the best liberal arts colleges in the world. So even though I'm doing esports, I have a much better background in debate, philosophy, literature, thought than he does by a long shot. But he doesn't even know my background, so he just instantly starts trying to use esports to discredit me, basically, when he has by far fewer chops or credentials when it comes to the thing that we are talking about. So he just constantly engages in bad faith, basically. And he's annoying. And I also think that he is a person who, if you knew him, he loves being the edgy guy. And he doesn't actually have a moral center, is the thing about him. Because back in the day, being the edgy guy in esports meant that he was dropping all of the no gamer words in StarCraft 2 and just provoking people. And then, guys, he figured out that the new way to bully people was to be super woke. And so he just completely 180'd. And so he was the dude who was like bullying people by using inappropriate epithets during StarCraft 2 and like being the funny guy who would say the bad things. And then all of a sudden he's some sort of super far left wing. Oh, super, he's very concerned about people's emotional states. I'm like, this isn't the guy I fucking know. I know this guy. I've talked to him in person. Like, he doesn't believe this shit. Like, he really just does things for money and for popularity, and he'll say and believe almost anything. Because I've seen him on both sides. And the thing is, people don't know what he used to be. They only know the current version of Destiny. But he basically just, he is a bully, and he will take whatever platform optically allows him to be a bully and win in the eyes of the most amount of people. Is my
It's why the weirdest,
I deeply dislike it.
The weirdest two people to know the before and after of are
Slasher.
Destiny and Slasher.
Yep.
Because they both did the same thing, like you say.
Yes.
They both went from, I'm the one saying all the heated gamer moment words, and being edgy, to them being like, wow, are you gamers saying all those words that I used to say publicly?
Shame on you. I'm the one who's right now.
No, first of all, dickhead, when did we ever say those words? I must have missed that one where we were all doing that. We didn't do that. And then secondly, as we're saying, you literally were the ones doing that shit. Like, that's the thing, by the way, with both those people that I refuse to abide by, is if someone came along doing what they themselves did, Monty, they would crucify those people and run them out of the industry.
Yep.
But they themselves are allowed to be forgiven forever for that. Even though, as far as I can tell, even their version of a mea culpa is like just mildly owning it. You don't really ever truly show you had contrition for what you did or you thought it was bad. Like you say, it just for real comes off like the joke would be in the same way as in the 80s, the bully just bullied you because you're a nerd and stuffed you in a locker. Well, now he's going to bully you because your mum has the OnlyFans. So it's like his new way to bully you, isn't it? Like, it still gets to bully you. I'm with you, Monty. I don't believe these people believe any of that shit, because the saddest thing is, if you got these fuckers over a drink privately, they'd all tell you it's for fucking WWE kayfabe, wouldn't they? Of course they would. Or they'd be like, you know how it is, the media game, you know what I have to do, you know the way influencers are. And it's like, I don't know any of that cocksucker. My whole life was about integrity and fucking authenticity, the opposite of what you're doing. Which is sad, by the way, because the other thing is, these people also could have been very good at what they do. They could actually been super cool individuals. The stupidest thing about someone like Destiny, by the way, is if he didn't pretend to be a know-it-all who knows it, he actually probably could be an interesting debate figure. Like, he comes with his own interesting background. He's a bit smarter than the average nerd, right? He's obviously had a million conversations on broadcast. Like, he could be an interesting character. I just find he plays a very boring role. Like, I'm just going to say it right now. He's just like a not very interesting left-wing Ben Shapiro. I don't find Ben Shapiro that interesting. So there we go. Enough said.
And then I saw they had a debate. I saw that they had a debate, like Destiny and Ben Shapiro, and I can't think of a single piece of content I would rather watch less
did you ever click that?
Than that fucking video.
The joke is, that's the video they will play to me in Guantanamo Bay to find out what I know about the location of the bomb. You know what I mean? That'll be it. It'll be that. What happens in Guantanamo Bay, I will be forced to watch Ben Shapiro debates Destiny straight
also
into
dates. That'd be interesting.
Straight into the music video of Ribcage (parentheses Awakening) by Gabby Dunn. I just threw that one in there just to be a dick. Whatever, it's all good, because they were using music to torture people in Guantanamo Bay. If you know, guys, so it's all good.
But yeah, I mean, I find his career arc to be super weird, because anybody who knew him at that time would not have guessed that this would be the end result. And what now he's like in some fucking scandal where he married some like Swedish teenager.
Oh, right. No, I don't think she was a teenager. She was just a woman, as far as I know. But yeah,
I mean, she's a lot younger than him.
I might be wrong on that one.
Okay. Whatever. She may have been like 20 or 21.
Could be. Okay.
And then like she had like a separate boyfriend, and now they're divorced. I couldn't even keep up. My brain just started melting down when I started seeing this shit. Yeah.
No, she's 25 years old now, mate.
Now,
so she wasn't that young. Come on. Yeah. No, but when did they start dating? Surely it wasn't.
She
that
must have been like
right?
21 or something at the time.
That could be. That could be. Okay.
But anyway, this whole shit is just so stupid around him, and now he's like, his full-time job is now just like, cover. He's basically like, as far as I can tell, he's basically just like Keemstar for streamers now, where he just talks about other streamers' drama and then has his own drama with like his ex-wife or something. I don't know. The whole thing is just fucking wild. Whatever. It's so stupid. I don't like Destiny. I don't want to engage in his content. I don't like who he was, and I don't like who he's become. Why solo queue prodigies like Magifelix and Edgurin are not in the LEC? Well, in LCK, that's the case. Today, Bulldog is rank 1 on the server. Canyon Cuz Showmaker perma top 5 every year. Chovy finished last season being rank 1. I don't know the answer to that question, obviously. What about the differences in solo queue between LEC and LCK? I mean, LCK is probably just much more competitive than the European servers because it's not just Korean players playing on there. It's a bunch of Chinese players and other players from other regions as well. Not Vietnam, now that Riot barred the Vietnamese players from playing on it. But it's also like there are just a lot more players trying to be professional in LCK, like the amateur players, and all of the teams have their development rosters. So there's probably just a lot more competition to be number one. So it's a better reflection of actual professional viability, I would think.
I would suggest that when you were a Korean player, they actually, I think one of the healthiest things they have is I get the sense that when you join a pro team, even if you were rank 1 on the Korean server in solo queue, you don't come in thinking you're hot shit and you're the star player. You know you've just joined a professional team and you're nobody. You've only gotten through the first step, the gate, as it were. Like, actually, you need to figure out in this team, how does my coach want me to play? How do my teammates want me to play? What is the meta? In my opinion, in a Korean team, you're way more likely to conform to the team system. Whereas, like, I'll give you the example. The best example ever is Selfmade, by the way. Everyone I know who's a pro player, Monty, tells me if you're just in like solo queue or a random scrim, this guy is a demon. Like, he's unbelievable. His mechanics are like out of this world. But they also told me for years and years, that's all he's good at, though. He doesn't have the social aspect to be in the team. He doesn't have like other teams. He's not a supportive style. You know what I mean? It's got like a one style. And his problem, I would essentially suggest, is I do think when he's having the success in solo queue or the scrim, that makes him think I'm a good player. Whereas what you're supposed to think is, I've only just met the basic requirement. I've got to learn the team game. In my opinion, being a pro is actually about not even about you moving the mouses. It's about things like, how do I work with my teammate? What does my coach want? What is our strategy? How do we win? So I think actually in the West, it seems that you get a lot of people who just have the talent and then they don't really like work on it beyond that, or they get lost in the chasm somehow. Because I've heard too many stories like that of the guys, the Kiri guy, the guys who were rank 1, fucking Lavrov was rank 1 for a long time, I believe, before he got good. There's loads of talents in the West that haven't made it,
Do you think Bjergsen was actually already planning to retire in 2020, or was it because of the World's performance? Also, what is your assessment of him as a coach? I mean, I don't know if I really know enough to assess him as a coach, frankly. Do I think he was planning to retire? I think the World's performance probably had a lot to do with his decision to take a step back and then unretire again, obviously, with the Team Liquid disaster roster and then his move to 100 Thieves. But I think after that, like, 06 TSM run at Worlds, after winning NA, I think maybe he was like, okay, well, it's another year of me doing well in NA and getting nowhere at Worlds. Like, maybe it's time for me to take a step back. I also just think he as a person was kind of over it in the later stages of his career.
See, my problem with that is this, Monty. Who the fuck wants to end your career on a 0-6 at Worlds? Like, that's mad embarrassing. I'd want to at least go and do all right and then retire. You know what I mean? Like, I'd want to do that.
Well, he tried with Liquid and then that didn't work.
True.
And maybe that was
pathetic.
Yeah. Maybe it was just a cleaner way to exit TSM in the end, or who knows what his contract offers were after the 0-6 TSM performance. It was very embarrassing. But also, I think Bjergsen was bored, frankly, of League of Legends in the last few years. I think he wanted to move on with his life. It's why you don't see him streaming, even though he could stream to a lot of people right now. He wants to do something else and like really take his life in a different direction and do something for him that's more intellectually fulfilling. So I don't think it's surprising.
Boo! Boo! Because when he's like, "Oh, I'm bored," it's like, "Oh, you're bored. You don't even fucking win the LCS title anymore, dickhead. That was years ago." Like, so what you mean is this, guys? Are you ready for how whack you all are? So your favorite player is Bjergsen. When my player Jensen comes along, we just compete on even ground. We're men. We just put ourselves out there. We say we'll let the results stand. And when Bjergsen wins, we go, "You know what? I'll doff my cap. You were better, sir." Then when Bjergsen's not winning anymore and it's Jensen stacking all the titles and Bjergsen wins the odd bullshit online one, he goes, "Nah, I'm not really trying. I'm not feeling League anymore. I think I'm just going to retire." It's like, get the fuck out the server, you bitch. Get the fuck out. Where's your competitive spirit? You know, I think I got bored. Mate, you made one playoffs of Worlds ever in your career. The boring part is you don't do anything. Like, here's what would be interesting. How about try and do some Worlds? Like, am I missing something? Bro, that's a pretty good challenge. That's like the challenge, isn't it, in League? What is this? Because that's the thing I find sad, by the way. I'll go back to it every time we ever bring this topic up. I don't have a problem with Bjergsen playing in TSM, but he played for too long, Monty. Like, he should have just done like a couple of years less. Like, the obvious era is if he left in either like 2018 or 2019, that would have been a perfect time because he'd already got his titles, he'd already done loads of work for TSM, and now he could have had the chance to either go and write his own ticket when he's still really good. Remember, dude, in season 9, he was still a banger. Like, he almost won that fucking TSM split himself over Team Liquid, the one where they got the reverse swept. In this era, he could have either gone to Europe and made an amazing team in the same era as G2, by the way, or he could have just been on a different NA team and made his own super team and tried to go for like a Worlds run and get to like semis or finals. Wouldn't that be dope? Imagine Bjergsen actually making like semis of Worlds. Wouldn't that be fucking sick? And by the way, while he's still really good, because like I said, in season 9, he was still good, mate. He could still flop off back then.
Sure. Yep. I think there were a lot of questions about, especially had he gone back to Europe, what would have happened. All right, final question. If you could insert yourself and play out the story of any villain in a movie, who would you pick and why?
Ooh. Right, here's mine, but you're not gonna guess it, and you're not gonna be able to handle it either. If you've ever seen the movie from the 80s called Masters of the Universe, it's a He-Man movie. Yes. I would be Skeletor. Do you remember when he gets that like god tier thing? He gets like the powers of like fucking all the like galactic. That's the shit when he puts that golden helmet on and becomes like god tier Skeletor. That fucking sick. And also Frank Langella, whatever, who plays that role. Peach of a fucking actor, by the way. Phenomenal actor, god tier actor. That's the villain I'll play. Skeletor from Masters of the Universe. There you go.
I know Darth Vader's a pretty banging villain to be if you had to be one.
It's pretty good.
You're kind of the Emperor's bitch in a way, so maybe the Emperor's better. Being the Emperor's pretty all right, I think, in Star Wars. You know, I'm trying to get some
pretty good speeches. Yes, that fucking banger speech. Strike out to me. You know.
Like his ascension is relatively painless, and also his death ends up being relatively painless as far as like villain ends go. Awesome. So the Emperor in Star Wars is pretty great. Khan in Star Trek.
You just get to return randomly for no reason at any point in time. You just return.
Yeah, you just get to return. Just come back for no reason. I actually haven't seen that movie because I refuse to watch it. So
it's bad, mate. It's bad.
I will never watch that.
You're not missing anything. You're not missing anything.
I successfully have avoided the 4th Indiana Jones movie up until this point in time, and I will forever just avoid that Emperor comes back final Skywalker whatever movie. Fuck that shit. I don't need that ruining my positive experiences of the original trilogy. But yeah, Khan from Star Trek 2, Wrath of Khan. There's another great character. Just become a genetically engineered super dictator. That seems pretty rad. I like that one. Okay. Well, thank you guys for your questions again this week in your Discord subscriptions. We will be back with another episode yet again covering. I know we didn't touch on LCS a lot this week, guys, but we have 4 best of 5s this coming week for LCS. So we will get to LCS more next week with a lot of talk about those playoffs, and we'll see you then.